Eamon, and I am so excited to be here and presenting to all of you today. Um, I would start my video, but it's disabled, but that's okay. I work here at my Valley College, and um, I think that this is a really great presentation. It's been built by a lot of people who care about getting you knowledge that's going to help you be successful in your role, whatever that may be. So let's go ahead and get started. So the fact FAFSA is an acronym for the Free Application for Federal Student Aid. And this is what students who have a social security number, not are or are a permanent resident, this is what they are going to use to apply for need-based financial aid from the federal government, state governments, and whatever institutional opportunities colleges and universities also offer. We are going to talk about a lot of stuff today. So I highly encourage you to utilize the Q&A. There are a lot of really smart folks on there who are here to help answer your questions. But let's go ahead and talk about what you can expect from this workshop today. I'm going to talk about the types and sources of financial aid. I'm going to talk about how to create an account, completing the FAFSA, evaluating aid offers, and how to appeal for more financial aid, because that's a really important piece of information that everybody should know about. And then, of course, some resources and helpful tips at the end. So what do we know, right? Okay, so this application has been all kinds of wackadoodle since 24, 25. I know, because I'm working on it right now with my students. So I have a lot of questions from folks in the community asking, okay, well, when can we expect the next one for our current high school seniors? Are there any changes? What about my mixed status families? We're going to talk about all of that as well today. So just keep your ears peeled. We're going to talk about all of this today, because I know this is on the top of this was on the top of my brain when I was like, okay, what is happening this year, right? Okay, so let's first start with the basics, right? When a student does a financial aid application, essentially they're trying to make themselves eligible for all the types of financial aid. Okay, so what are the different types? Students can be eligible for scholarships, grants, loans, and also student employment through federal work study. Gift aid in the form of grants and scholarships is great because there is no expectation for those types of aid to be paid back. That is there for the students to use towards the cost of attendance for school, which includes personal expenses, food, housing, books and supplies, right? So they can use that money in turn for grants however they like. One thing I do want to note about scholarships is occasionally there is a qualifier with a scholarship. So sometimes that money is paid directly to the student, but sometimes scholarships do come with a qualifier. So it's important to read the fine details of the scholarship, because maybe its purpose is to be used specifically for books or specifically towards tuition, or maybe specifically for a laptop. So do keep an eye on that. Loans are great. Loans are there for the students to utilize. They are a worthwhile investment, but they do need to be repaid with interest. And in the process of applying for a loan, students will be educated on what their interest rate is, what the expectation is when they're going to have to pay that back. I am not going to go into super detail because that's not why we're here today. The last piece I'm going to talk about is student employment. There are opportunities on campuses to have an on-campus job. They're typically called federal work study position. I have student workers in my office that I educate and utilize to help in my office. So that's another really great opportunity that students should inquire about if they do need additional support. Here is a lot of numbers. Okay, so this is the breakdown of the federal student aid financial aid programs that a student may or may not be eligible for depending on their student aid index number. So the max Pell Grant at this time is $7,395. And what's really nice is if a student is enrolled full-time, they can utilize a Pell Grant if they continue to be eligible for 6 years. Okay. Additionally, there is the FSCOG grant that is provided to students. Again, these are annual amounts. Sometimes students are like, oh, I can get this in one semester. No, this is the annual amount. So this is what this is the max that a student can receive if they have high need for the entire academic year. Teach grant requires a service contract, otherwise it converts into an unsubsidized loan. Work study is going to vary from school to school. So what I recommend my students is ask, right? See, like, hey, you know what? I notice that there is on-campus jobs. How can I get access? Sometimes there's a waiting list. Sometimes there are specific departments that are hiring. It's always really great to ask, and there are opportunities on and off campus, which is great. Additionally, when a student does a FAFSA, they may utilize that information to apply for a direct student loan, either subsidized or unsubsidized. The amount that a student is eligible to withdraw each year or apply for is going to vary based on their dependency and how many units they have already completed at the institution. So their undergrad level, essentially. And then there's also a Parent Plus loan. So the parent doesn't need to do a FAFSA, but the parent does need to have an FSAID, and they can request up to the annual cost of attendance minus any other financial aid. So typically when we're going through the Parent Plus loan, parents are working with the school to find out, okay, well, what is the max that a student can request? Okay, so now the fun part. I do want to mention with making a studentaid.gov account, it's important to know that you can do this right now. I've had a couple of community partners reach out to me saying like, okay, well, what can my students do right now? And they can do this. They can make a studentaid.gov account, or it's also called an FSAID. And the very first step is you go to studentaid.gov to make an account. And this is what is going to be used to start, complete, and sign a FAFSA for all contributors. Okay, I'm going to say that word a lot, contributor. Every single contributor needs to have an FSA ID, regardless if they have a social security number. Okay, and we're going to talk about that a little bit more. So very first thing, the student should be making an account to start their FAFSA. Okay, dependent students need their contributors to create their own studentaid.gov account, and each person must use their own email. It will get flagged if they use the same email. Like you will get text that says, oh, there may be an account already associated with this email. It's also going to flag it if it says .edu. So it's really important that we use personal emails when creating the studentaid.gov account. Okay. I recommend using a personal, frequently checked email. Temporary email addresses, such as school assigned email addresses, it doesn't like them. I say that like the website has a mind of its own, and in my opinion, sometimes it does. But it's really important to make sure that we use a personal, frequently checked email, because this email is going to be utilized for the two-factor authentication that needs to be done to verify identity every time a student or a contributor signs in. So it's really important, a personal, frequently checked email. Plus, that is also the email address that will be utilized for any kind of updates. And what we saw last year was a lot of changes, a lot of updates, a lot of workarounds. And so again, it's really smart if you have high school seniors, or you are working with high school seniors, or you are working with students who know that they are going to be attending college in the 25-26 school year. It's really great to make an FSA ID now so that they can get the updates about the new application. Okay. So which of the dependent students' parents need to make an FSA ID? Okay. If the parents are married and they file their taxes together, only one parent needs an account. Or if the parents didn't file taxes together, both parents need accounts. Okay, so if the parents filed together, right, so their tax status is married filing jointly, only one parent. And so what trips students up is that they see that they have the opportunity to invite both parents, not realizing they only need one parent to contribute because they're married, and so that information is combined. Okay, I will go to the next slide. Okay, now in other cases, both parents will need to make an account. So if the parents did not file taxes together, or if the parents are both filed as head of household, then they both need an account. Okay, so this may be confusing. Let me start over. If the parents are married and they filed their taxes together, only one. If the parents did not file taxes together and they are married, both parents need accounts, especially if they're living together. Okay. And the other circumstance which only one parent needs to contribute is if the parents are divorced or separated and not living together. Okay. Cool. Also, if the parent, and I run into this a lot with my students as well, where they're like, okay, well, my biological parents aren't married, but my mom remarried or my dad remarried. Do I need to ask my step parent? And in that case, maybe. So if the student is living with that parent, right? So if the parent is remarried and the and that parent, like if it was like a recent marriage, okay, that may be a case where both the parent and step parent, if they got married recently, they will both need accounts. Here's a nice thing though. This is not information, this is information designed to kind of help you so that you can kind of broach those conversations like, hey, I'm aware of your parents' situation because either you've disclosed it to me or I know you, and you're trying to have that conversation of like, hey, it would be a good idea to ask one of your parents or both of your parents to make an account, right? Also, when the student is going through the application, they will be asked a series of questions like, okay, what is your situation? Are your parents married? Did your biological parents who divorced, did one of them remarry? It'll ask them those questions and it will specifically tell them how many contributors they are going to have. So that's a nice thing. Okay. Parents without social security numbers. So this is a really important slide to talk about because I encounter this a lot in the students that I support of parents without a social security number who also need to contribute to their students' application. I've also seen this for spouses who don't have a social security number and need to contribute to their partner's FAFSA. So the account creation process is very similar. The difference is the very last step is the contributor will go through an identity verification or identity validation process. And they have to answer some knowledge-based identity validation questions. And if they answer all of those questions correctly, bing, bang, boom, their account's done, it's verified. Woo, we love that. If for some reason one of the knowledge-based identity validation questions is answered incorrectly, then they are going to need to, one, manually enter their federal tax return information. And two, they may need to go through a separate identity validation process. Okay, we're still waiting on some more details about whether or not that will be required for 25-26. But we shall see. This is, again, a really good idea to have your studentaid.gov account already created because if a contributor does need to go through that manual process, they will be notified, likely via email. Okay. Some known problems. The studentaid.gov account creation, it has errors. Mainly if so I've seen this most commonly when a student invites their parent to contribute and then tries to make an account afterwards and says, oh, there's already an account. And then the student comes to me and says, my parent has never done this in their life. I don't know why. So they will call, right? And then they can't get a hold of somebody in the information center to get a case number. We've also seen some other problems where the acceptable ID may not look the same from another country. So, we like to make things positive, right? So here's some workarounds, right? There is assistance available using the live chat feature as well. There's also a couple of workarounds that can be utilized, like using a period or a zero or a space for the street address, or leaving it blank and then editing it later. Another little trick that I've seen students use is especially for a non-SSN contributor who lives in a foreign country, because trying to get a foreign address to look like a US address is kind of tricky. The student will just temporarily use their address in the States while they're making the account, and then they will update the address after the student has invited the parent to contribute to their FAFSA. So that's another workaround that I am aware of. Okay, so that's fun. We love that. We love workarounds. Okay, now we've talked about what is financial aid. Okay. We've talked about how to essentially get started by making the studentaid.gov account. So now how do we complete the darn thing, right? Let's complete that 2526 FAFSA hypothetically. It's not actually available just yet. Okay. So what is this application doing, right? Why is this important? What's it doing? So essentially the free application for federal student aid, or FAFSA, is essentially collecting information. It's collecting student and parent, student and spouse, income, tax, assets, and household information to then determine that student's eligibility for need-based financial aid from the federal government, state government, if there are any institutional grants and scholarships available, right? And then from there, it's going to calculate that student aid index, which is a measure of a family's financial strength. Essentially, like, financial aid offices are going to use that student aid index number to determine, okay, what does financial aid look like for you at my school specifically, okay? One thing I want to highlight, that student aid index number is going to be the same going from school to school, but the cost of attendance will fluctuate. So the reason I mention that is sometimes students are either confused or disheartened when they see that student aid index number at the end of the process, and they're like, well, I'm not going to get any financial aid. And that's not necessarily the case, right? We really want students to do the application, and yes, we're going to use that student aid index number, but there is so much financial aid that's out there, so many different programs that are not necessarily need-based, that it's definitely worth it to do the application. Okay, now I'm virtually stepping off my soapbox and moving to the next slide. So when and where to file the free application for federal student aid? Please file as soon as possible on or after the application becomes available to qualify for the most amount of financial aid, okay? Even before submitting college admission applications. Now, one thing I want to highlight, this slide is very well-meaning. It says October 1st. And it's not wrong, but it's also not correct. So the 25-26 FAFSA will be available for some students. And even in my speaker's notes, like, some is italicized. So some students on or after October 1st. But the Department of Education has announced that the financial aid, the 25-26 FAFSA, will be available for all students starting on December 1st, okay? So it's not wrong, but it's not right. So Some students will have access on October 1st, but for the vast majority, it's going to be December 1st. Okay. And so we know that students who file the FAFSA in the first 3 months after the FAFSA becomes available are most likely to receive gift aid, including grants, versus students who apply later. It is so important to really be strategic about completing the financial aid application quickly so that offices have more time to work with the students so that if corrections are needed, we can make those so that students have access to their financial aid when they need it. Okay. So dependency status. And I personally love that they changed dependency status to student personal circumstances because I feel that that is a more accurate reflection of what these questions are supposed to be asking. Okay. So for the most part, students under the age of 24 are considered dependent and must provide parent information unless they answer yes to any of the questions in the personal circumstances section. So, for example, if they are married but not separated, if they are a graduate or professional student, be careful with that one. I have very tenacious students who are like, Erica, I'm going to become a doctor someday. And I'm like, I love that for you, but you just graduated high school and you are 17. I don't think you are pursuing a medical degree if you have only your high school diploma currently at the time of doing this application. So be careful with that one. Okay. So um, taking a step back, for a lot of our high school students, they should not be answering yes to that graduate or professional question. If the student is a veteran, if they are enlisted, if they are in a court-ordered legal guardianship, meaning their parents live in a foreign country and there is a legal court-ordered agreement between in the family's state of residence. Like saying, for example, mom and dad may live in another country, but aunt and uncle have court-ordered legal guardianship to make decisions for their niece or nephew. Okay, something like that. Or if the student is a court-ordered emancipated minor, if the student is an orphan or a ward of the court, in foster care, has legal dependents other than a spouse, or someone who is unaccompanied and homeless or self-supporting and at risk of being homeless. Any one of these questions, if the student indicates yes to, then they will be, their personal circumstances will be evaluated. Now, a couple of things. A student may click yes to one of these questions, either intentionally or accidentally. And one of the things I like to tell students is like, if you put yes, then you need to be prepared to provide supporting documentation to back it up, right? So if you are in a court-ordered legal guardianship, that may be documentation the financial aid office will ask for. If you are an emancipated minor, right, in foster care, these are things that we may ask more, especially if a student self-declares that they are unaccompanied or a homeless youth, right? They're lacking fixed, regular, and adequate housing, which includes living in a shelter or a park, a motel, hotel, public space. If they are going from house to house, they're couch surfing, right? This is something that we will likely, as a financial aid administrator, follow up with the student and say, hey, I am so sorry to hear about your situation. Let's talk about what this means for you, and we will work with them to try to do that dependency override if they are having an unusual circumstance, okay? Ooh. Oh no, did I? Oh, ha, okay. So what if the parents won't complete the FAFSA? This is a question I get asked quite a bit. Okay, well, Erica, the student just got kicked out of their house. The parents are not comfortable providing their information. What do we do? So there's a couple of different ways to tackle this. So if the parents refuse to contribute to the FAFSA, then if it's a matter of they are able to but unwilling, then the student can apply for a direct unsubsidized loan. Um, unless it's a unusual circumstance. So typically in these situations, we like to talk to the students to say, okay, hey, what is the more accurate situation? Because if the student is financially self-sufficient, they're not claimed on the parents' federal tax returns, they don't live with the parents, they have a job, maybe that's something that, like, especially if they don't have contact with their parents, then maybe that's something that as a financial aid administrator, we can look at and work with the student. But I want to make it very clear that depending on how the student answers these questions, their FAFSA may be rejected. And so regardless, the student will need to follow up with whatever school they are planning to attend. If the parents live in another country, or if they're foreign citizens, if they are undocumented, they are still able to make an FSA ID. They're still able to make an FSA ID and contribute. It may, and like we talked about in the earlier slides with the account creation, it may be difficult, but it is possible because I've been working with students to do this. So it's just really important that if you have a student who is in a unique circumstance, just give them, if you could do us a favor, and I personally thank you, talk to your students and have them have realistic expectations, like, hey, this is going to take a little bit longer. So if you are able to work with your parent to get them to contribute, you may encounter less errors when doing the application. Okay. So like I mentioned, if the parent is not provided, if the parent information is not provided, the most financial aid that the student can get is an unsubsidized loan, unless we are working with a student to do a dependency override. And these are rare. And it usually involves it involves interviews with the student, it involves getting letters, asking questions, and a lot of times it's because of these scenarios where the parents are incarcerated or institutionalized. It's an abusive home environment, there's abandonment, we don't know where the parents are, or if there is death of a custodial parent. These are some scenarios in which financial aid administrators will do a dependency override with the student. And it's not quick. Because we have to talk to the student. We typically have to go through an appeal process. We have to get some documentation to then show why the dependency override is needed. Okay, so now that we got that out of the way, let's talk about which year's information is going to be reported. So starting with assets, any kind of asset, and here's a cool or a little trick. When you are working with your student and they're in the asset and they're like, I don't know what an asset is, there's this really helpful little question mark bubble box that's on the right hand side of the question. You can click it and it will give you a description of what the asset is. I actually tell my student workers, as I am training them on how to assist students in doing the financial aid application, I said, hey, back when I was a student and helping folks, I didn't know everything and it took a while to learn. So one of the little tricks I would do is I would just click the bubble, read it out loud, and then all of a sudden, either the parent or the student or the spouse would have this like epiphany, like, oh, that's what it means. So that's what I recommend. If you are, if you haven't memorized this presentation or you're not a financial aid administrator, that's your trick. Okay. So assets are going to be reported as of the date that the student is filing the FAFSA. Okay, so assets are going to be balances of checking, savings, and cash in your wallet. It's going to be if you have a rental property that you have tenants for, but you do not live in yourself, that's going to be reported as an asset. If you have a business, regardless of how many employees, if you have a business, that is getting reported as an asset as of the date the FAFSA is filed. Okay. Now, for income purposes, This is going to be based on the prior tax year. So thinking about it, if this application becomes available December 1st, we have not finished 2024 yet, right? So we're not going to use 2024 tax information when we're reporting our income. We're going to use the most recent tax year, which is 2023. Okay, so that's going to hold true the entirety that the application is available for, right? So December 1st, 2024 through June 30th, 2026. It is going to be using the tax information from 2023 because that is the most recent tax year that is completed as of the date that the FAFSA becomes available, okay? I get asked this, well, Erica, can I just use 2024 income? No, you cannot. Well, but my income doesn't look like 2023. Again, I am so sorry. We're going to work with you, but at the time of doing the FAFSA, you have to use 2023 information, okay? So the family size, another thing to keep in mind is the family size is going to be based on the federal tax information that's transferred directly from the IRS. Or in the case of mixed status families who have an FSA ID, but don't have a valid social security number, they are manually entering this tax information. So for families that have their tax information automatically imported, it's going to use the information of the parents' filing status, right? So are they married? Are they separated? Head of household? Plus whatever dependent. So the fun thing, well, I say that sarcastically, but essentially, it's not going to tell you what it is. So if a family's like, well, I don't know, because this was sometimes this is like 2 years ago. I don't remember when I put on my tax return. I don't remember yesterday. Right. So the nice thing is families can still self-report what their family size is. So if you are encountering that where the family is saying like, I don't even know what this is, that's okay. You can still update it yourself if it's the same or if it's changed, right? If we have a new family member, since filing taxes for 2023, then you can update it that way. Whatever the self-reported family size is, that's what's going to be used when determining the student's student aid index number. Okay, this is fun. We're having fun now. You gotta love doing this application. I mean, the end result is nice because hopefully the student's eligible for aid, okay? So reportable income. So information that's imported from the IRS Direct Data Exchange. The income that is going to be imported in is going to be adjusted gross income, income earned from work, taxes paid, education credits, and net profit or loss from the IRS Form 1040 Schedule C. So a little trick that I use when I'm going through the FAFSA with my students is, do you know if your parent owns a business? Oh yeah. They own a business and blah, 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 blah. I'm like, cool. And then I know to look for the Schedule C to report that information. If they're like, oh, no. My mom is awesome and works for the financial aid office. She doesn't own a business. Then we would just put 0 for that information. Okay. I'm pretending that I am my son. The untaxed income that will be pulled in is tax-exempt interest income, untaxed portions of IRA distributions and pensions, IRA deductions and payments to self-employed SEP, and other qualified retirement accounts, and any kind of foreign income of U.S. citizens and permanent residents if exempt from taxation. So this is a lot of information. Again, we're going to use Erica's bubble trick, where if you don't know where to find that information because you yourself are not a tax specialist, neither am I, you use the bubble trick and you say, hey, where you click the little question mark bubble, where can I find this on my tax return? It will give you the specific lines, right? So adjusted gross income, line 11, income tax paid, line 22. So that's a nice little trick to use. And sometimes what I'll do is I'll use a paper FAFSA, find the correlated question, because on a paper FAFSA, it also has that information on there. And again, I want to make it very clear that all of this information is self-reported, and if for whatever reason the student makes a mistake, because we are human and we make mistakes, we can make corrections to the application as well. This information does not to need to be memorized. It's simply to educate you so that, you know, when you're going through this with a student, you know, my voice pops up in the back of your brain like, oh yeah, Erica talked about this. I'm going to use her bubble trick, okay? Reportable assets. So the current total of cash, savings, and checking account is going to be asked, as well as net worth of investments, including real estate, right, that you don't live in. So if a student's family has a rental property that has tenants, the value of that property will be reported, but not the home that they live in, okay? Additionally, if the student has a 529 account, that it will be reported in the parents section as an asset. And the nice thing is they only have to report that particular student's 529 account if they have multiple dependents with multiple 529 accounts. Only that student's 529, I have words, I swear. Only that student's 529 account needs to be reported, okay? And then another question that will be asked is the annual child support that has been received by that parent contributor in the most recent completed calendar year. So again, going back to our example of, okay, let's say that I'm super optimistic and my FAFSA is available to me October 3rd, okay? The most recent calendar year is not going to be 2024 because it's October 3rd, 2024. So I'm going to use 2023. But, you know what, maybe I'm like, you know what, I don't have a lot of trust in this FAFSA because it became available December 1st. So I'm just going to wait until after my Christmas break, after my winter break, come January, then I'm going to do the FAFSA. Okay, then in that case, the most recent completed calendar year is now 2024 if I'm doing my FAFSA January of 2025, right? Because the reportable assets are as of the date that the FAFSA is being completed. So just keep that in your brains, okay? So school selection, where do we send this FAFSA information? And I want to make it very clear, some students are really funny because they're like, well, Erica, what if I'm not going to your school? Are you going to be upset? I'm like, I really could care less. It's your application. You put whatever school's on there. And usually they're like, okay, you know what? I'll put your school, Erica, just because I like you and you're funny. And then they'll put all of the rest of their schools, their UCs, their Cal States, their out of states and private schools. So a student can put up to 20 schools. And then when I was practicing this presentation last night, my husband chimed in the background, well, what if I want to apply to 70 schools? And I'm like, then you're going to do 4 transactions. So if for some reason your students are like super ambitious, and we love that, okay? We love super ambitious students who want to apply to all of the schools in America. We love them because they are high achievers and we need to support them. So what can they expect? They're going to put 20 schools at the beginning. I recommend, like, if you have like a top handful, then, and you want to make sure that they get it, I would recommend, like, if you have top schools, just make sure they are included in your first transaction. And when I say transaction, I mean like how many times you're submitting the FAFSA. So you start with 20, okay? You go through the rest of the application, right? So the rest of this application, the student signs it, the parent contributes, signs, and submits. Cool. Now, every time that FAFSA is submitted, whatever schools are on that specific transaction are going to get a copy. So if you send it off, cool, it's been fully processed, all 20 schools got it. You then go back in, make a correction, delete the 20 schools, add 20 more, and then go through the rest of the application, make sure it's signed and submitted, because those second 20 will not receive it until after it's been fully signed and processed, okay? So, and the student can do that as many times as they like. If they have 70 schools, that's just, you know, a very silly example, but they can go through this as many times. The one thing I want to say, if they have to change something, right? So let's say something changed when they are selecting their third 20 schools, like, oh, actually, I changed my address, or now my baby brother, baby sister was just born. That's a very extreme example, but if something has changed on the application and then the school that was on their very first transaction doesn't have that correction. So it's just really important that if you are changing something, then it's only going to be that the schools that are on that specific transaction are going to get that correction. Okay, so moral of the story, whatever the school, wherever the student submits their intent to register, make sure they have the most updated FAFSA correction. Okay. Okay, so what happens next, right? We finally have reached the conclusion. We added our schools. We sent it off. We heard that big sigh of relief, like, oh, we finally did it. Thank goodness. What happens next? What can the students expect? They should look for their FAFSA submission summary. Okay, this used to be called the Student Aid Report or the SAR. It is now called the FAFSA Submission Summary. It's very clear now. So after the student completes their online FAFSA, the FAFSA submission summary is going to be available to the student in their student ID portal. So if they go under their activity and they look for the most recent transaction, you kind of have to look for it, but I typically will walk students through it and say, okay, here's where your FAFSA submission summary is. And then it gives you a nice little display like, okay, here's your responses to every single question on your FAFSA. If the student did a paper FAFSA, then a paper summary will be mailed to the student if no student email address is provided. So what the guidance that we've received is, even if a student is completing a paper FAFSA, it's recommended that they still have an FSA ID with studentaid.gov so that they can have that FAFSA submission summary available. Because that paper summary is mailed if there's no student email address provided. And then an electronic copy of the data is sent to each college or university listed on the FAFSA. And like I mentioned before, only that school will receive just the information. So for example, I'm not going to see if, you know, Sally put 15 other schools in addition to mine. I'm only going to see mine for like my school listed in addition to all of the FAFSA submission summary information from the student. I think it's very cute that students are concerned about me seeing where else they submitted their FAFSA. I'm like, I'm trying to help you be eligible for aid at my school, and I hope that my colleagues will be doing the same. Students should keep a copy of the FAFSA submission summary with other financial aid documents, so sometimes it's just nice to have that proof. For example, if a student's trying to qualify for a specific program at the institution, having that FAFSA submission summary is really important so that they have documentation like, well, no, this school was on there. I should qualify for this program. Or what sometimes happens frequently is, oh, shoot, I did my FAFSA, but that school wasn't on there. Oh no, can I still submit it? And the answer is always yes. You may submit a correction and still qualify for this program because we want you to. We want you to have financial aid. Avoid some common errors with the FSAID and the FAFSA. So this happens a lot, and it's really funny. I had a very specific example where the parent and their student had the exact same name and the same birth date, as in month and year, or sorry, month, month and day, but the year was different. I thought that was really interesting. So for that reason, do not confuse student with parent or sibling information. Basically, this means when you're going through the student section, all of the questions should be answered with regard to the student. So I think that students are like very overwhelmed when doing this application. They think that they need to report their parents' income as their own. And I'm like, oh, no, 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 no. Please do not do that. If you did not work when you were a junior or sophomore in high school, you can put zeros. That's fine. You didn't file. So that's the truth. So, and then for the parents, they put in their parent contribution information. So that's, again, one of the nice things about having the contributor information separate is that the hope is that that information will remain separated because the student is in their section and then the parent has to log in to then contribute to their student's application. Don't switch child support paid with child support received. It's really important that it stays as received. So if the parent did not receive child support, or it's important to keep that as a zero. Do not report the value of qualified retirement plans or family home as assets. This happens a lot. I typically have to clarify this at the workshops that I run, where they're like, oh, do I need to report my retirement plan? No, you do not. Oh, well, what about my family home? Is that considered an asset? I mean, yeah, but you don't need to report that as an asset. That question is specifically if there is another property that you own where you have tenants for, right? Or if you have a vacation home in like Oceanside, like, hey, cool, hit me up. I want to go. Just kidding. So we don't want to report individual retirement plans and we don't want to report the family home as an asset. And then if the student has siblings, we're not going to report the 529 college savings plans for the other siblings. It's just going to be for the in the parents section. When the parent is contributing, the parent is only going to report the 529 college savings plan for that student. And then also double check the name, the date of birth, the social security number, the email address, the address, and the zip code. It is very important, especially when first creating the FSAID, especially for my mixed status families. Sometimes I will encourage them to just either write it down or take a screenshot when they are putting in that address specifically, because it has to match to a T when we're inviting the parent. Okay, so it's really important to make sure all of that information is correct. I worked with twins the other day where the twins, like, they knew their social security numbers, but their parent didn't. And so being really, really like cognizant about those basic demographic items is very important. Okay, next slide. So evaluating aid offers. This is fun. So this is what we do a lot sometimes with our students who are like, okay, well, how much does it cost to go to this school versus that school? So some colleges they will offer this net price calculator on their websites that will notate the difference between the total annual cost of attendance and then what aid they may potentially be eligible for, so that you have a more a more realistic understanding of what it costs to go to school. So when looking at those net price calculators, make sure you really look at the cost of attendance, because all schools are required to give you a line by line breakdown, an itemized breakdown of all of the costs. So how much is the school budgeting for food and housing? How much is the school budgeting for personal expenses, for books, for supplies, the tuition, the other associated fees? It's really important to understand, like, hey, yes, you got to pay the tuition and the fees, but you also need to have a place to live and eat food. So understanding that, like, what are the associated costs, and understanding the terms and conditions of financial aid, such as the difference between grants and loans, right? Grants, gift aid, doesn't need to be repaid. Taking out loans, that those loans do need to be repaid with interest. And sometimes colleges will automatically package students, assuming they're going to take out loans because the cost of attendance is higher. So also understanding, okay, are the grants upfront, or are those grants used as refunds that are then paid throughout the semester or the quarter? And so making those decisions is really important in terms of educating students about like what what the actual costs to go to school are. And then also scholarship displacement. So again, those scholarships sometimes come with a qualifier. So understanding, okay, this is my scholarship money, but it has a specific purpose. It has a specific use. And if that scholarship goes away, are there other are there other types of aid that can compensate? So asking the big questions. Again, I can't give you all of the answers. We can only talk theoreticals. These are all decisions that students get to make for themselves. And then, oh, this is my favorite slide section. Yay. How to appeal for more financial aid, because it's an option and it's available to students, and it's very, very, very important. Okay. So how to appeal for more financial aid. So I want to make this very clear that when a student does an appeal, it's for one school. They are not making changes to the FAFSA, but they are working with the college where they submitted their intent to register, so that that college has a more accurate understanding of a family's ability to contribute to the student's education. Okay. So if the family's financial circumstances have changed or differ from a typical family, right, there are options available to students, and it's really important that they advocate for themselves. And a lot of times it's on the student to initiate that conversation. Yes, they may be able to indicate they have an unusual circumstance, and we will send them an email. Sometimes we will call them. It changes from school to school. So it's really important that if a student comes to you and is aware of their unique situation, giving them the knowledge and helping them to get the confidence to advocate for themselves is so important. Okay. So kind of like what we talked about in the tax section is, if there are changes, like, well, can I use 2024 income because that's more accurate? I made a lot of money in 2023, but we're not making a lot of money in 2024. That's a conversation to have with the financial aid office and submit an appeal. Okay. Recent unemployment, a dislocated worker, if there are high unreimbursed medical expenses, if there are high dependent care expenses, or there's housing changes due to homelessness. Like we talked about, if there's one-time events, like I've actually encountered this a handful of times. A family won the lottery. And they're like, well, that year we won the lottery, and then we used all that money to like pay off debts and things and student loans. So now we don't have that kind of income because it was one time. Okay, no problem. I will work with you to do an income reduction appeal to then make sure that we're using more accurate information to determine your student's ability to contribute. There's also a really nice tip sheet available for more financial aid. And it's listed at the bottom of this slide, cantorwoods.com/book/appeal. please, if your students are aware of a unique circumstance, it's so, so important that they have that conversation so that, and I know it's scary. I'm sure that my students, before they get to know how quirky and weird I am, they're like, well, I don't know. It's financial aid. It's weird. I get it. So just, we are approachable. We do want students to have their financial aid, just having them, okay, and I'm off my soapbox. Cool. um, Resources and helpful tips. Um, Please complete the FAFSA before, especially if your students are residents of California, before California's priority deadline of March 3rd, 2025. The reason for that is students don't sometimes realize that they didn't submit they didn't submit their application, or they're still waiting on their parent contributor. So however you can encourage your students, your families to try to have the application completed prior to the deadline, it just allows more padding for corrections, for, errors to be resolved, for like, oh, crud, I didn't click submit. That's silly. Just trying to submit prior is always a good idea. Plus, it's been shown that the sooner students apply for financial aid, typically the more aid they qualify for. Because if we have the application, we're working on it, and the student's file is more ready to go, we have their verification completed, we have all their documents, the FAFSA is good to go, we verified their enrollment, they will get their financial aid sooner. They will have a more accurate idea of what aid they qualify for. So when they are making those hard decisions, they're at least educated and know what aid offers are available, assuming that they submit prior to the deadlines. And then also apply for financial aid regardless of income or assets, because like I talked about, there are other programs available at schools that are awarded to students regardless of income or assets. For example, California community colleges are offering a lot of tuition assistance programs regardless of household income through Promise. So that's a really nice option for students to just have, even if it's as a backup. And then including at least one college in California, even if the student plans to study out of state, so that they can qualify for the awesome Cal grants that we're going to talk about later. I'm not going to talk about them, but CSAC will. Woohoo! And then keeping a copy of the final confirmation page and all documents used to complete the FAFSA, just in case you need to make a correction, or if a student is selected for verification, like, hey, you said that you made this was your adjusted gross income and it happens to match your parents. Maybe we need to correct that information, right? So just keeping a copy of the final confirmation and all documents used is just a good thing to do. Checking the California Student Aid Commission's web grants for students once the FAFSA or California DREAM Act application is completed. Find out if you qualify for, or if you're encourage students to find out if they qualified for a Cal grant. And then keep checking your email for important notices, because last year the application rollout was all kinds of wackadoodle. So I am going to be optimistic and hope that that doesn't happen again. But, just in case the rollout is a little it already kind of is a little wackadoodle with a maybe October 1st, but it should be available for everybody by December 1st. So just if there are workarounds that the Department of Education is sharing with folks, it's going to be sent via email. So just checking your junk and spam folders, especially when you're first making the account to provide that two-factor authentication. It's really important. And then some other federal student aid assistance. There's a lot of really helpful answers to common questions. Like I mentioned with my bubble trick, there are descriptions of the different questions, how to apply for aid, the different types of aid. So studentaid.gov is a really nice resource with a plethora of information. Families can also contact the Federal Student Aid Information Center if they need to ask questions. There are live representatives available, and then there's a live chat and an email option as well. There are tips on the FSAD, and then there's financial aid resources for students and counselors as well. Any information you are willing to equip yourself with is very helpful, just again to answer those one-off questions. And then CSS profile. So this is the another type of financial aid application. This is not necessarily tied to the FAFSA, but it's going to ask a lot of the same questions and then some. This is going to look into some more detail, like especially if parents are divorced or separated, it will ask for asset and income information for both parents, regardless of marital status. So this is a supplemental application that's used by a lot of private schools, especially, and for some scholarship competitions to determine a student's eligibility for institutional aid. So not federal aid, but institutional aid. This is another application. It's $25 for the initial registration and then $16 for each additional college. CSS profile. So some of the schools that I know that utilize this are Stanford University, the Claremont colleges, USC, Caltech. So a lot of private schools. And also on CSS Profile's website, it does have a really nice table of all of the schools that utilize this supplemental application. So how can counselors help? If you are willing to host a Cash for College event at your school or in your district, invite the students and parents to the financial aid workshops. My style is I like to take 20 minutes at the beginning to say, hey, this is why you're here. Here's a really quick breakdown of the types of financial aid, some common tripping up points that we are observing. And this is some follow-up information just to keep in your brain. So just taking 20 minutes, hosting the workshops, it's really helpful just to kind of create a sense of community, like, hey, let's all struggle together, but also let's all help each other. If you want to host workshops for specific audiences like Avid, first generation, or like some students who just need like extra support, it's a really great idea. Definitely asking your local college or university, see if the financial aid folks there are willing to provide some assistance, if they're willing to come out to your school, or if they have supplemental resources that they can provide you. Never hurts to ask. Keep connected with California Student Aid Commission, Federal Student Aid, and other good resources on financial aid. Sign up and disseminate information in public service announcements from Federal Student Aid and social media. They actually have these really great toolkits to kind of help give you a schedule of disseminating knowledge. And then if you want to write articles and emails, blessings upon you. I do some of that, and it takes a lot of mental bandwidth. So, thank you for joining us. I think we were utilizing the Q&A. Thank you for having me. I'll hang out in the Q&A.
Okay, Erica, thank you so much, and thanks for everyone for answering the questions. So Erica, if you can stop sharing, and if we can pull up the CCGI slides, that would be great. So everyone, here's what's going to happen. We're going to do about a little quick 5, maybe 6-minute presentation from californiacolleges.edu. This will be quick. When we conclude with this, we're going to give you a break. And then when we come back from the break, we're going to start with the CSAC section. You can continue to ask your questions, but hang on for another 5 or 6 minutes. We'll give you a break, and then we will jump into the CSAC portion. All right, take it away.
All right, welcome everyone. I am here to talk a little bit more about financial aid tools on californiacolleges.edu. My name is Doris Ingram and I serve as the Director of Engagement and Implementation. So glad that everyone is here today. Again, as John mentioned, we'll be here for just a few minutes for you to learn more about the tools. And once we conclude, you'll have your break and there'll be some information on how to follow up should you have questions. So who is the California Colleges Guidance Initiative? So we really manage the californiacolleges.edu platform, which is the state's official college and career planning platform. The platform is a crucial part of the cradle to career system, and we're also a legislatively authorized service provider that's included in Ed Code for all California LEAs. And the access is free to all LEAs in the state of California, and we're not a vendor or a grant-funded initiative. Also wanted to make sure that you are aware that we partner with over 250 school districts currently serving 70% of California's high school students, connecting all of the California public higher education system, so our community colleges, our CSUs, and our UCs, and of course, CSAC, which is why we're here today. On the platform, there are free college career and, importantly, free financial aid tools for students and reporting features for you as educators to learn where your students are in that financial aid process. We do want to share a quick video that's going to talk more about the process here.
Since 2018, California Education Code 51225 has required public schools serving students in grades 9 through 12 to provide information on how to properly complete and submit a financial aid application before they start the 12th grade. To support schools with this mission, californiacolleges.edu provides grade-level specific financial aid lessons, which are designed with California students in mind. Our lessons are fully translatable using our accessibility menu, which enables users to experience the platform in a way that fits their individual needs. Users can utilize the accessibility menu to enable a screen reader, increase contrast, adjust text size and spacing, and change fonts. 6th through 10th grade students can access introductory financial aid lessons, which cover the foundational financial aid topics, including the different types of aid available, how to qualify for free aid, and how to determine the costs of attending college. The 11th grade lessons support students in determining which financial aid application is appropriate for them to submit and provides a list of materials they will need to complete their free application for federal student aid, also known as FAFSA, or the California DREAM Act application. SB 153, which was signed this July, says that all local education agencies, or LEAs, are to advise students to complete the 11th grade financial aid lessons on californiacolleges.edu. For 12th grade students, the lessons focus on actionable knowledge. The lessons provide seniors with step-by-step instructions that are tailored to the application they are submitting. Students' financial aid checklists help them stay on track throughout the application process and have been updated to reflect recent changes to the FAFSA and California DREAM Act application. Seniors can launch their financial aid application directly from californiacolleges.edu anytime during the application cycle, enabling them to track whether their application has been submitted and completed, including the status of their Cal Grant GPA verification. When students launch their application from californiacolleges.edu, educators can pull reports that track which students have begun their applications and verify that student applications have been submitted and completed. These reports are updated daily due to our data sharing agreement with the California Student Aid Commission, or CSAC. Beginning this fall, the report titled Download Only, Current College Eligibility and Application Statuses will provide educators with a spreadsheet displaying the CSU, UC, California Community College application statuses of all seniors alongside their financial aid application status. This report provides a unique opportunity for educators to monitor in one place the post-secondary application statuses for all students and provide targeted support to those students who need it the most.
The financial aid tools on californiacolleges.edu have proven invaluable to our students, parents, and counselors. The financial aid lessons provide families with a step-by-step guide on completing both the FAFSA and California Dream Act application, including a checklist of essential documents and required information. We utilize the reporting tools to track which students have submitted their financial aid applications and ensure our counselors follow up with every senior throughout the process. Centralizing our college, career, and financial aid planning on one platform has been advantageous, providing all stakeholders with easy access to essential information.
The future of California depends on the success of all students. CaliforniaColleges.edu, we believe that all students deserve the opportunity to succeed. Our goal is to streamline the college application and financial aid process so that more students across the state are empowered to enter into their college of choice and have the financial aid means to pay for it.
All right, so if you'd like to learn more, feel free to follow the next steps and scan the QR code. This information will be a part of the PDF documents that were sent out by CSAC, but we admonish you to attend a webinar to learn more, to use the financial aid lessons to support the work that you're doing with your students, encourage and have all of your seniors launch their financial aid application through CaliforniaColleges.edu, and then use the reports to really support the work that you're doing and follow up with students that may need a little more support. If you're not currently a partner district and want to learn more about that, there's information here for you to follow up and learn more about how to become a partner with CaliforniaColleges.edu. And finally, that is the end of our presentation. We'll be headed right to break right after this. Turn it back over to you, CSAC. Thank you, everyone. Great to see you.
Okay, great. Well, thank you. I appreciate it. So if you want more information about CCGI, just check out the links that were provided. And we're going to take a 10-minute break approximately. Let's come back at, let's come back at 10 o'clock. How about that? A little bit longer. Let's come back at 10 o'clock and we will resume with the CSAC portion. So take a quick break. We'll see you at 10. Thank you. Okay, all right. Thanks, Victoria, for the heads up. Okay, so welcome back. We answered a lot of questions. We want you to continue to ask your questions using the Q&A part of Zoom, and we will try to answer those. The other thing is we've had a couple of people ask this. Yes, we will download all the questions and answers. We'll edit them, and then we will send these out to you so you have them. If you didn't get the PowerPoints, you need to email us. We'll provide an email address so you can do that. Maybe one of my colleagues can type that again in the chat. Check your spam and your junk email, and then we should get it. I also want to just clarify a lot of confusion about when the FAFSA is actually going to be open. It's going to be open in December. It's going to be open in December. They're doing some beta testing now with select sites, colleges, and universities, and then they're going to, they're going to work to process those to make sure everything's working correctly. But it's a very tiny group of students. So for all intents and purposes, FAFSA will open for your families and your students in December, hopefully December 1st, like they said, we'll see. So just a FYI on that. And then I want to thank Erica for doing such a great job on the actual FAFSA presentation. Um, the thing I noted is that she said that the FAFSA presentation, in the FAFSA presentation, that the rollout for FAFSA was wackadoodle. I have some other words that I use about the FAFSA presentation and, excuse me, about the FAFSA rollout, and they're not wackadoodle, but they're also not safe to say here. So we're going to leave it at that, and we're going to get going. Before I start, I just want to make sure everyone can hear me okay. I'm going to lose the video. So if I could have any of the attendees type in the chat, yes, John, we can hear you. And you sound great, by the way. You don't have to say that part. I just want to make sure that you guys can hear me. Okay, cool. All right, so let's go. Like I said, I'm going to lose the video. It's a little distracting, and we will continue. There we go. Okay, so welcome to this portion of the workshop. This is the CSAC, California Student Aid portion, and we're going to jump right in. I want to thank our partners at CASFA and CISFA. A lot of the people who are answering the questions for the FAFSA portion belong to these organizations. These are organizations for financial aid administrators, and we work with them really extensively, both to put together the FAFSA portion of the presentation, as well as to find presenters and people who can assist during the workshop season. So they have very good information on their websites, including some resources for high school counselors if you're interested in that. So go ahead and check them out. Here's our agenda for today. One, applying for aid. We'll talk about that very briefly. I'm going to give you a look at the California DREAM Act application. It's not going to be line by line, but we'll kind of go over it. So if you're not familiar with it, you'll get an idea of what it looks like. If you are familiar with it, you will have some more insight, a little refresher for this coming year. We're going to look at the state financial aid program. So this is the usual suspects, Cal grants, etc. High schools working with the Student Aid Commission. We're going to talk about how high schools can be working with CSAC over the course of the academic year and kind of highlight some things that we should be doing, working together. GPAs matching and editing. There's nothing sexy about GPAs and matching and editing, but it's important work that needs to be done. So we're going to just go over that so you understand that process and how it works. And then we're going to leave you with some resources and just kick you the heck right out of here. So that's our agenda. Let's continue. We want to thank our resource partners. A number of partners work with us to provide information that you can use. If you go to one of our in-person workshops, we have a lot of printed materials that are provided from our resource partners, but we recommend in the email that you get, there's a list of all our resource partners, and we certainly recommend that you check them out. Like I said, these are all partners who just want to help you help your students in different ways, and they all provide very good resources that you can use to do that. So when you have a chance, your homework assignment, take a look at their websites, and and see how you can use their information to help your students apply for aid, get more aid, etc. You should have received a PDF copy of both the PowerPoint presentations, in other words, both the FAFSA part and the CSAC part. We sent you links to some additional online resources. That's still a little bit of a work in progress because we're updating the CSAC website and nothing's easy, right? So we're making progress, but we're not 100% there. We also sent you a little spreadsheet that lists every conceivable link for every resource or website or organization, et cetera, that we talk about today. And it's in the same chronological order as the actual presentation. So that hopefully makes it easier to find. We sent you some Q&A from previous workshops. Like I said, we're gonna update this Q&A with the questions we got today. And it was a ton of questions, and we'll update that and clean it up and then resend that out. You'll also get a link to this recorded webinar. We're recording today. We may record again in the future, but this one will be on our website at some point fairly soon. So I want to remind you that we do have other virtual events coming up. This is the first one today, which is why we have so many people here. We have a number of these. We also have a couple CADA line by line. So if you work with undocumented students, and you do, you want to make sure you really know the ins and outs of the DREAM Act application, or the CADA as we call it. So you can sign up for those workshops as well, and we'll go over those in great detail. I'm also going to add that we will be adding additional workshops. Typically, we do sort of the FAFSA CADA updates that are just whatever's happening or whatever's new with the applications. So we will be adding those and probably some other things as well. So stay tuned. Hopefully you get our emails. Exciting news at the Student Aid Commission. We have a brand new executive director, Dr. Daisy Gonzalez, just recently, just weeks ago, actually, just started with the commission. Marlene Garcia retired after a number of years. Marlene was fantastic and really moved us in a very positive direction, and we are hopeful that Dr. Daisy Gonzalez does the same. She comes most recently from the California Community Colleges sector. So I want to make sure that you guys know she's very focused on students and doing whatever we can to help students achieve their goals of, getting financial aid for higher education. And she's very proactive, and I think we're going to see some amazing things come out of her leadership. So welcome, Dr. Daisy Gonzalez. All righty. So applying for financial aid, applications, date, income ceilings, etc. High-tech graphics. That was kind of our whole budget right there on that little thing. So enjoy it while you can. California has two applications. We have the FAFSA, right? FAFSA was rough this year. We're not going to lie. The rollout was rough. Everything about it was difficult. And so I know I'm preaching to the choir here, but it was very, very difficult. So, and we also know that for mixed status families, it was incredibly disappointing the way that it rolled out. So we're hopeful that there's changes made to so it's easier to access and easier to finish, especially for our mixed status families. We'll talk about that a little bit more. So the FAFSA application on one hand, and then we have the CADA. Some people say CADA. You could say either one. We don't care. We have the California DREAM Act application. That application is for our undocumented students. It is proprietary to the California Student Aid Commission, which is good news for you, because if a student has a problem with that application, guess what? We can get right in, we can see everything, we can fix it fairly quickly. So that's kind of the advantage. It also processes really quickly as well. And we had no problems with the CADA. CADA worked great. So two applications. I do want to remind you, though, that when you talk about financial aid, it's really easy to talk about the FAFSA, and it's the FAFSA deadline, and FAFSA's coming up, and FAFSA will be available in December. And sometimes we forget to, in the same sentence, mention the California DREAM Act application, and we really need to do that. So jump up on my soapbox for a second. My ask of you is, if you say FAFSA, I'm hopeful that the very next thing you say is, or the California Dream Act application, because we don't want to stigmatize an application that some families are already reluctant to fill out. And we don't want to make it seem like it's this weird thing. It's not. It's just another application that happens to serve another cohort of students. All right, off my soapbox, let's continue. Our priority deadline remains March 2nd. Now, this year, as you're probably aware, it got extended because of all the challenges we were having with the FAFSA application. So, and because it came out late, and we had a very limited window for students to complete the application. This year, we anticipate that our priority deadline will remain March 2nd. So we want all students to complete applications, prior to March 2nd. I don't even want to tell them March 2nd because they're thinking, oh, okay, March 2nd, 10 p.m. I'm going to get right on that. We don't want that. We want them to do it as early as it becomes available, again, in December at some point, right? Everyone should apply by then. However, having said that, September 2nd remains the deadline for our community college students. So if you have students who are going to a community college, they can apply prior to September 2nd. And this year it actually was September 3rd because the 2nd fell on a Sunday. So, but September 2nd for community college students. But a lot of times students aren't sure where they're going to go. They have options. Maybe they're going to go to a community college, maybe they're not. You want to make sure that there's kind of sticking to that March 2nd priority deadline. September 2nd, great for the community college students, or students who kind of make up their minds late that they want to go to college and take advantage of the aid they can get. So there's also foster youth programs where they can submit by September 2nd. For Cal Grants, there are income and asset ceilings. So we do have a fixed dollar amount that students and their families cannot exceed. It's based, as you can see by this little diagram here, on family size and on the type of Cal Grant. So based on the family size and the type of Cal Grant, these are the income ceilings that families can make in order to qualify for a Cal Grant. Remember, there's also a GPA component. We talked a lot about Cal Grant reform last year. Cal Grant reform didn't happen because California is broke. So we're going to hope that Cal Grant reform maybe passes next year or goes through next year as planned. We don't know that yet. However, this is where we are. We're still with the legacy system. We're still using these income and asset ceilings. There's still a GPA component. So we're kind of basically doing the same thing that we've always done until reform actually passes. So take a look at this. Remember, A and C have different limits than Cal Grant B. Cal Grant B typically is for lower income families, and you only need a 2.0 to qualify. With a Cal Grant A, you need a 3.0 to qualify. That part hasn't changed. So let's jump in and talk about the California Dream Act application. Again, I want to remind you, we have people standing by to answer your questions. So anything that I talk about on my portion of this before I turn it over to Tracy for the second half, please feel free to ask your questions. And like I said, we have lots of people standing by to answer those. We're doing our best to answer them in real time. And we've answered, we're approaching 200 questions. So we're on it. So California Dream Act application. We've put on the bottom of the slide, no human being is illegal. Man, it's rough when I hear someone use the term, illegal alien, because no one's illegal, right? You just have a different status. So California has a huge undocumented student population, more than any other state. And it's important that we have this application that serves them. And that's really very specifically why the application, came to be. So let's talk about the California Dream Act application. One really important point, and we hope that you share this with your students and their families, the application is secure and it's private. We don't share this information at all except for financial aid purposes. So we don't share it with any other federal agencies. There are privacy laws in place that obviously we respect. So it's safe to fill out the application. I know that there was a lot of trepidation in the previous administration, but I can tell you during those 4 years, we never had an instant where someone had a problem with their immigration status because they filled out the application. So it's just not a thing. So you can tell students and their families, look, we get it, we understand, but it's better to fill out the application. It's better to get money for financial aid. It's better to go to college. And California, fortunately, is one of the states that's working really hard to ensure all that information is secure and remains confidential. Let's look at the application itself. Now, there are resources that you can find. If you look at the homepage, there's a link up there that says information and resources. I want to point out that even though it's on our list to do, um, we still do not have the application, the online application in Spanish. So the CADA, the DREAM Act application, is only in English in the online version. We do have a Spanish version that's available for the paper CADA. You can print that out. Sometimes that's helpful for families where English is a real barrier and maybe they don't have access to any additional help. So um, you can print out the Spanish version, so sometimes families find that helpful. Even though it doesn't correspond line by line with the questions, it gives you a really good idea of what the application is asking. You can also, sorry. You can also print out the paper English version for yourself. It's a really good resource to have if you're answering questions, because the student will say, hey, I'm working on the application and I'm doing this part and I can't figure out what's going on. And you go, okay, let me look. And then you could kind of look at the corresponding section of the paper application and get an idea of what they're talking about. So I recommend you print out both the printed FAFSA and the printed CADA and have those as reference materials. So who can apply? This hasn't changed. The application is primarily for our undocumented students with or without DACA. We don't have any high school students graduating with DACA these days because DACA is a real political football and it's going through the courts, which is unfortunate because it has helped so many tens of thousands of people. But it doesn't matter your DACA status. If you had it previously and you don't have it now, or you never had it, it doesn't matter. It doesn't affect your ability to complete the DREAM Act application. TPS status, temporary protected status, if you don't know what that is, the US government can designate a country TPS, meaning that for a variety of different reasons, it's difficult or impossible for people to return back to their home country if they're on the list. Normally, this is because of civil war, it could be famine, it could be a natural disaster. One of the most recent countries added was Ukraine for obvious reasons. So if students have TPS status, they could be eligible to apply with the CADA. Students will come to you with a variety of different visas, and they'll say, can I use, if I have this visa, can I fill out an application? 99% of the time, the answer is no. But the one exception to that is the U visa. So the U visa, you can fill out and the application if you're a U visa holder. That's the one exception. For the FAFSA, it's the T visa. So you do have a couple of those exceptions. All right. Okay. Not eligible to apply, like I said, any visa holder except you. If you're a US citizen or a permanent resident, you can't fill out the CADA, you're going to fill out the FAFSA. One more thing, if you have students who are working to get their refugee or asylum status granted, if they haven't done that yet, they're still considered undocumented and they may be eligible to fill out the DREAM Act application. So once they do get their asylum status granted or their refugee status granted, then they're going to be FAFSA filers. But in the interim, they could potentially fill out the California DREAM Act application. You have to meet AB 540 requirements to get in-state tuition and to get state financial aid. So basically, it's previously you had to be in high school for 3 years And that was it. High school 3 years and, or bust. That was the requirement very early on. That's no longer the case because with the new legislation with SB 68, it expands the parameters around what you can use to become eligible. So now it's a combination of 3 years of attendance at a high school, an adult school, and a community college. And if you have 3 years of attendance at any of those institutions, then you could qualify under AB 540. What we see a lot is students who maybe have only been in the high school for 2 years, for example, and then they graduate, and in the past they had no path forward to get a Cal Grant. Now, if they go to high school for 2 years and they graduate, they can go to an adult school and do the corresponding amount of coursework and credit hours to get AB 540 status. They can also go to a community college, or they could go to both. So it's a combination of the three. And it's a little convoluted. I'm going to show you why when we look at the application a little bit more. But at least they have a path forward to meet the requirements to get in-state tuition, which is a big deal, and to get financial aid from the state. One of the changes on the DREAM Act application, previously on the homepage, we had kind of 3 sections. We had the section for people who had never logged in or created an account, and then we had the login for people who already had an account, and then we had the parent signature section. So we changed that, and we said, what we're going to do is we're going to find the world's smallest font, the tiniest writing possible. We're gonna make this like Where's Waldo, and we're gonna put this under the login. So for students who are creating a new account, it's not super obvious where they need to go if they've never created an account before, or they've never done an application before. They do need to go under and click that little tiny minuscule click here. And I've had students look at this for 5 minutes and go, I don't know what I'm looking at. That's where they need to go. So if they're creating a brand new account, that's where they'll go. Help them find it, point it out. We would appreciate it. I keep requesting that we make it bigger. We're work in progress. We're working on that. When the student opens up the application, what they're going to see is they're presented with 2 different academic years. Obviously, they want to fill out the application for the academic years that they will be in college, right? So for our current seniors, they're going to be in college for the 25-26 academic year. Students get confused. They go, but I'm graduating in 25. Shouldn't it be 24-25? Anyway, you want to make sure that they're doing the correct academic year. Everything's fixable. If they do the wrong one, we can fix it. But let's do a little preemptive strike and tell students the application that you're filling out is the one that corresponds to your college academic year when you start in college after you graduate from high school, or when you start in college, period. Not even necessary when you graduate from high school, right? That's the application you're doing. Same thing with the FAFSA. You're going to college. When are you going? Okay, here's the corresponding year you need to fill out. We added these huge, giant, ginormous red exclamation points all over the place. And the reason that we added these is to make it very clear that a section has not been completed, or that there are errors in the section, or a mandatory question wasn't answered. So this is helpful for you because you can tell students as you do the application, these giant in your face red exclamation points are going to disappear, and they'll be replaced by beautiful green check marks as you do each section. So if the high school student does their section and they fill it out, the red exclamation mark point will go away and they'll get a green check. Now, sometimes they don't have to even complete the section for that to happen. So a student who's a high school student is probably going to indicate that they're not married. And once they do that, the spouse section will disappear, right? The exclamation point will disappear, and that will automatically be replaced by a green check mark. We want them to do this in sections, and we want those exclamation points to drop off and be replaced by green check marks. Students have to fill out obviously all their demographic information, including the high school they will graduate from. This is a pretty easy process. They can plug in the basic information and they will, they can then use the drop down. They want to make sure that when the school appears that they click on it, because it should appear down there at the bottom where it says school name. Sometimes it shows up, right, when they're doing the search, but if it's not down where it says school name, then they haven't actually finished that process. If they need to make edits, they can make edits, but basically this is pretty straightforward. Sometimes students say, well, I haven't graduated yet. Yeah, we know, it's okay. Put the school that high school that you're going to and the one that you are going to graduate from. Just like the FAFSA, students can list up to 20 colleges. We get a lot of questions about this. Oh, is there any importance to which colleges they list first? Or, does it matter in what order we put them? So here's what I can tell you. On the FAFSA, and I think we talked about this in that section, you want to make sure that students always list the California college, even if they're going out of state or they think they're going out of state, list a California college. What happens is when you list the colleges on here, the very first college that's listed is going to be the one that we default to for the Cal Grant. Now, that doesn't mean anything. Why doesn't it mean anything? Because students have the ability to easily change or add colleges. So if they put, I'm going to go to UC Davis, and then they say, oh, I decided ultimately to go to Sac State, they can go in and make those changes. That doesn't matter. But just as a point of reference, it probably makes the most sense to list the college that they're most likely to attend, followed by all the other schools in no particular order. It doesn't matter. They can just list the schools. Now, we do recommend that if students, especially if they're not sure about where they're going to go, that they list a school from every segment. Why would they do that? So why would they list a community college, a CSU, a UC, and a private school when they go, I'm not going to go to a private school, or I'm not going to go to a UC, or I'm not going to go to wherever? The reason is it's kind of interesting because you could see the financial aid that you could potentially get from each one of those types of institutions. So that's a good reason. Then you're doing kind of an apples to apple comparison for your financial aid. Some students say, I'm going to the community college across the street. That's it. That's what I'm listing. Great. Good enough. You can do that. But don't worry too much about the order, whatever. Have them put the college they're most likely to attend first, list all the other ones. Everything's fixable, everything's changeable. And oh, by the way, they still have to go and create a Web Grants for Students account and then verify their college of attendance, even if it's the first one listed. That doesn't mean that it's verified in our system. And so what that means is that they'll go to college to get their paycheck and they won't have any money waiting for them because they're on the wrong roster. They are not on the Cal Grant roster to get their money. This happened with my daughter. She goes to American River College, and I told her, hey, you need to create your Web Grants for Students account and you need to claim your college, i.e. verify your college of attendance on there. And she would say, Dad, I don't have time for your TED Talk this morning, but thanks anyway. And then one day she came back from the community college and she said, hey, Dad, I went to get my money and they couldn't pay me and they said something that was wrong. And I said, wow, weird deal. I wonder what happened. So obviously we went into Web Grants for Students. We claimed American River College as her college of attendance. So we verified that information. And then that immediately put her on the correct roster. So she should get paid. So just a little cautionary tale, right? Even when you know this business pretty well, doesn't matter. Your kids will not listen to you. All right, list up to 20 colleges, any order. Put the one most likely, the one that they're most likely to go to first. So here's what's new. Now you may not be aware of even what the AB 540 affidavit is. So in a nutshell, if a student completes a DREAM Act application and they're awarded a Cal Grant, the school has to provide them with this form. Honestly, it's a rubber stamp, but it's a form that they need to fill out that the school keeps that says, I will abide by this and I will move forward to, with my status, et cetera. And so um, it's a it's an important part of the process, because if they haven't done that and they get selected for verification, they're not going to get paid. And that's a big deal. When students don't get paid the first term at college, what do? They typically drop out, and very often times they don't go back. So what we decided to do was put that form that they have to do, that when you tell the student AB 540 affidavit, they're like, what? I've never heard of that. So it becomes very incumbent upon the colleges to try to reach out to the students, and it becomes just this really fairly difficult process. So we embedded this into the actual application, and you're going to see a couple pages like this. You guys are really going to have to help your students navigate this portion. It's a little clunky, I'm telling you right now, but it's important that they do it. So you're going to see 2 pages like this that have these 3 questions. The main takeaway on this is you have to answer all the questions. So the 3 on this page, the 3 on the following page, they have to be answered. That's number 1. Secondly, you have to manually enter the name of each college, high school, adult school, or wherever you went. And like I said, it's a manual process. So there's no lookup feature and there's no drop down. You basically go in and you manually put in the name of the school, the city, the state, when you started and when you ended. Now, for students who went to a high school for 4 years, that's pretty straightforward. High school, I started in, whenever I started, uh, 2022, I'm going to finish in 2026 or 2021, 2025, whatever it happens to be. But like I said, you have to put it in manually, and then you save that after that each time. So that's the one thing. And now here's where it gets, I want to say exciting. It's not really exciting, but here's where it gets challenging. We added this. This is a new feature. So if students went to any other schools, um, and plus including the high school, they have to list the corresponding amount of credits or hours they accumulated for each one of those. I can tell you this, we're going to have a lot of help around how to do this. We're going to create videos. We're going to give more information. We're going to have things on our website. We're going to use our social media, because this is just not going to be an easy process. So I'm not going to lie to anybody, but they have to list the school and the corresponding amount of credits or hours that they achieve. Now, the reason that we're doing this is because we wanted to mirror more closely what the CSUs are doing. We want schools to automatically accept this online version of the application, because if that happens, it will make life so much easier, right? Then the student's done, they don't have to worry about it, but it's really incumbent upon us to walk students through this part. So I'm just giving you the heads up. We have information about this, and like I said, we're going to offer a lot of training around this particular section. So we'll take care of the training part, and if you guys can work with your students to help them get through this process, that would be helpful. All right, let's continue. Now we're going to work and put in the parent information. So when you start this, you put in the, what is the current status of your parents? They were never married, or maybe they're married, or they're divorced. Maybe they're just special friends. I don't know. You're going to click the corresponding thing that is accurate, and then you're going to move on to the parent section. Again, with the parent section, what do we notice? The giant, humongous red exclamation points are in there. So it's the same deal. As you complete each section successfully, that changes to a little green check mark. Hooray. And that means that you're done with that. So you go through, parents are going to put in their demographic information. Then they're also going to provide their financial information. They'll create all their personal identifiers. Remember, with the DREAM Act application, there's no FSA ID. Students do have to go in and create an account if they're doing this for the first time, but it's not the clunky process, and parents don't need to go in and create anything separately. They're just doing their portion of the application, right? So we'll talk a little bit more about that. But this is what it looks like. You go through, and again, you list the information, and you get the green check marks, and that means, you know, green is good, green means go, and that's what you want across the board. Where things can get tricky is sometimes you have parents who didn't file taxes. That's not only for CADA filers, that's also for FAFSA filers. In the event that parents did not file the corresponding tax return or didn't file taxes, you can indicate that, will not file or did not file. But you can also indicate will file if they haven't done it. And frankly, that's kind of the preferred option if there's any chance that they may file in the future. But if they didn't file, it doesn't mean that the student can't get aid. They can. The family, the parents or parent will have to indicate their earnings. That's regardless of their, tax status. The challenge that we have sometimes is that a family, here's an example, family doesn't file taxes, they have jobs, and they report their earnings on the application, and they say, okay, we made $73,000. So what happens is that flags that particular application because the dollar amount that they made is over the IRS filing threshold. So that flags it. So there may be cases where families have to go and get an I-10, which is not an easy process. It's not a free process. It's very time consuming. And so, you want to do a little bit of a preemptive strike when you're working with families and just say, hey, here's some scenarios you need to be aware of as you get ready to fill out this application. Signing the application is super easy. When the student gets done, now you notice, look at all the green check marks. It's beautiful. When the student gets done with their portion of the application, they're going to do the sign and submit. They're going to click the two little disclaimers, and then their student signature box will be filled with this beautiful font that's, I don't know who thought of that, but anyway, it's going to be filled electronically with their signature, and then they're just going to click, and then they're done. So signing is actually quite easy. And now we've made changes so that the parents can sign immediately following the student. It's very seamless. You'll notice here that both parents are listed, and you only have to have one parent sign. It doesn't matter which one, or if there's only one parent on the application, then it's obvious. You click that box, that will electronically populate in the parent's signature, and it will submit. And you'll get a little pop-up that says, hey, your application's in process. Typically, it will process from one day to the next. So students should be able to see information as soon as the following day. But you'll see the little pop-up, and then it means you're good to go. So the parent signature is much easier. They can do it at the same time. We don't have that PIN. Remember, I don't know if you know, but we had a 4-digit PIN that they had to use before. We no longer have that. So yay. If the parent can't sign immediately following the student signing, they can log back in using that parent signature, portal section of the homepage. Just be aware that when they do it this way, they're going to have to answer some very specific questions about what the student put on the application. And that information has to match 100%. No variation, no deviations, because otherwise they're not going to be able to sign. So FYI, they can go in and do this at any time and then sign electronically. Just be aware that they have to mirror exactly what the student put on theirs. All right, how are we doing on questions? It looks good. Continue to ask your questions. Let's play Stump the Question Answer. Ask as many as you like, because today is buy one question, get one free. So let's take advantage of that special offer. All right, parent signature. So that's basically the CADA. Here's something that we get a lot of questions about. What if the student is living here with grandma or an aunt or a girlfriend or a boyfriend or whomever, but their family their parents or parent is living in another country. What is the scenario for that? What do they do? So if the student has contact with the parents, then the parents, we don't care about the taxes that the parents filed, because not all countries even file taxes, and the ones that do, it doesn't match our system. We're not going to import that information. We can't do it. So, the actual way that they file doesn't mean anything. The only thing that really matters is that we need to have the income that they made during the corresponding year. So if they have contact with the parents, what the parents will have to do is say, we made this much money in whatever the currency of that country is. You convert that to dollars, and then that's the information you'll use on the application, right? Now, if there's no contact for whatever reason with the parent or parents, and this is for both applications, there's a section of the application that says, my parent, I cannot provide parental information. And maybe it's because parents are deceased. Maybe it's because you're not in contact with one parent and the other one is incarcerated. Maybe because you have a parent, in rehab and another one in another country that's not available, or you don't have contact with. It doesn't matter the scenario. If the student really does not have any way to contact the parents, and or provide parental information, and they check that box, then what happens to the application is it's not complete. The application is in appended status, students in a holding pattern, the application's not complete. And what's really mission critical here is that the student contacts the financial aid office or offices of the schools that they're thinking about going to and saying, hey, here's my situation. I filled up the application up to this point. I don't have contact with my parents, not sure what I should do. And so at that point, the college can look at the student's information and work with the actual student to try to figure out if they need a dependency override, if there needs to be some accommodation on whatever. They can help make that determination. But that's the name of the game. The answer is always to fill out the as much as you can, and then contact the college financial aid office. They can evaluate that. So hopefully that's clear. There are scholarships available for our undocumented student population. There's actually quite a few. These are all places that list scholarships. So there might be some redundancy as you go through these where they're listing similar or the same scholarship. But I would advise your students to go onto these sites and check for scholarships that are available. We know that Immigrants Rising, updates their database on a really regular basis. So those tend to be current, and they typically show the ones that are currently available. That might be a good place to start, but I wouldn't hesitate to go in to all these different places and check for scholarships, or also work with the Dream Center at their local campus to look for scholarships. So if there's a Dreamer Resource Center or a Dreamer liaison at the local college, absolutely point your students in that direction. That would be another place where they could go to ask about other types of scholarship or money available to help them pay for school. There's something called the DREAM Act Service Incentive Grant. This is a really great program, and unfortunately, it's not on everybody's radar because it's relatively new. So I want to make sure that you're telling your students about this. Before I describe it, here's a really important part. When you're filling out the DREAM Act application, there's a little checkbox that you can check saying, I'm interested in the DREAM Act Service Incentive Grant, in the DSIG. And if students check that box, that list becomes available to the colleges that they list on their application. And the colleges could then reach out directly to the students to potentially offer the program. So tell students, even if they don't understand 100% what it is, or they're not sure, check the box, because at least they can have contact with the school and hopefully be given consideration for this. So what do the students have to do? They fill out a DREAM Act application, check. They have to be awarded a Cal Grant B or be eligible for both A and B. So that happens. The bottom line is they have to be eligible for Cal Grant B or be awarded Cal Grant B. They can then do community service or volunteer service, typically on the campus, but sometimes right off the campus as well, and make up to $4,500 a year for 300 hours of this community service or volunteer service that they're doing. Uh, they don't need DACA, they don't need a social, but they can earn this money. And frankly, this is a good way to bridge the gap between what they're getting in financial aid and what they really need to have. So if a student needs to work and they don't have DACA, that can become challenging. With a program like this, it can bridge the gap. So please make sure your students are aware of this. We have a ton of information on our website. We also have dedicated staff who oversee this program. So if you go into our website, you can get the information. You can print out this poster. It doesn't have the young man with the thumbs up in front of it. We kind of just threw him in there. But you can print out the DSIC poster, put it up in your office or where people can see it, your kiddos can see it. One important point is, it maxes out at 1,667 awards, but we've only been able to award typically 800 or 800 plus students. So there's a lot of openings available still. So please promote this program with your students. We would appreciate it. And they'll love it, right? It's a great program for them to make money while they're going to school. I mentioned Dreamer resource centers previously. On different campuses, these are called different things. My recommendation is if you're working with students, your undocumented students, and they're going to be going to whatever college they're going to, um, find out where the Dreamer Resource Center or the Dream Resource Center or the Undocumented Student Center, whatever it happens to be called, find out the information about that and provide that with your student. Even if the student is not sure they're going to be going to that school, or even maybe you're close to a local community college that has a resource, they can go ask questions at any school, right? Not even a school that they're necessarily going to attend. And the reason that you want to connect them with these dream setters is that they will offer a ton of services and just make life easier for the students, right? So they can talk about, the classes that they're taking. They can talk about their financial aid. They can, get them connected to other resources on campus. They can provide legal workshops around DACA and just a whole host of other things. And when you connect your students to these financial aid dream centers, then they're going to feel connected to the campus, and they're going to have a safe place that they can go, and they're going to have a resource that they're comfortable using. When all of that happens, you know what happens? Students stay on campus and they go to school and they don't drop out because they have a resource they can use on an ongoing basis. So this is really, really important. We have information up here from the College of the Sequoias. Last year we did Fresno City College. So we changed it up all the time, and they're all fantastic, right? We don't have favorites, but here's a list of things that this particular Giant Dream Center offers, and most of them offer similar services. So make a friend. This is what I always say. Make a friend at the Dreamer Resource Center at the college or colleges where your students typically go. Make a friend in the financial aid office of the college or colleges your students go. Make a friend at CSAC, right? So much better to have John on the hotline when you can say, hey, John, help me out, than to, maybe spend a lot of time trying to circumvent the system. Make a friend, have someone that you can email and connect your students with. All of our state financial aid programs are on our website. So simply go to our website. You'll scroll down about 3/4 of the way down. You'll see this, and you can click on any of those boxes, and that will take you to information about the programs that we administer. I mean, obviously the Cal Grant is the biggest program, but we have middle class scholarship. Chafee Grant's important. We also have a number of smaller programs that are not as well known. I would take the time to go in and just kind of look at each one of them. So check it out on our website. Here's the maximum yearly Cal Grant awards per segment, per Cal Grant, et cetera. I think I want to point out that Tracy, maybe you can jump in and clarify this for me, because I know there was a little discrepancy about the UC amount?
Yes, I can jump in and clarify that.
Okay.
So, the University of California just a few years ago implemented a uh, staggered tuition stability program. Some of you may be familiar with it. What it means is that students' tuition charges based on the year they entered the University of California system. And so in order for the UC to implement tuition increases, they're doing it on a year-to-year basis. And so we are currently awarding Cal Grants based on the UC tuition for the 24-25 academic year, but there are still students who are renewals who are still receiving, say, $12,570 a year in Cal Grant. So really what this slide is going to be updated to show is that students receiving Cal Grant A or B at a UC can get 12,570 and up. So it's the amount can vary based on when the student entered the system. So I hope that helps.
All right. Thank you. I owe you. You have Venmo. We'll take care of it. All right. So thanks, Tracy, for clarifying that, because some people were looking at this and saying, but wait a minute, the UC. So it could be something different than what we're showing you. So just a FYI on that. Otherwise, everything on here is accurate, and it just shows you the maximum dollar amount for each of the individual Cal Grants. Now, just something interesting, a little side note. If you look at the community college, you say, well, it goes from CC reserve, which translates to $0, you get nothing, up to $6,000. So that kind of seems weird, right? Why is that? Well, before the Cal Grant A, if you had a Cal Grant A and you went and you started at a community college, you had a Cal Grant, hooray, but you didn't get any money. You didn't get any money until you transferred to a four-year university. And so it was called, it was on reserve until that happened. So yeah, you had a Cal Grant, it just didn't pay you at the community college. It was intended to pay tuition and fees at a four-year. So you have $0, even though you're awarded $0 at the community college. And that's still the case. If you get a regular quote unquote Cal Grant A and you go to a community college, it goes on reserve. However, we do have a couple different programs where you can get paid a Cal Grant A at the community college. One is, for example, students with dependents. So, we know a lot of people who go to community colleges are adults who are going back to school. Very often they have kids. If they have kids under the age of 18, and the kids are dependent upon the parent 50% or more, basically if you have kids, then you could get up to $6,000 at the community college with a Cal Grant A. And we're seeing lots of students who meet these qualifications. So that's why that dollar amount differs a little bit. Also remember, side note, that a lot of community colleges now have four-year bachelor degree programs. So some students who are enrolled in the bachelor degree programs at the community colleges for that coursework could actually receive a Cal Grant A or a middle class scholarship or something. So it's a little, it's kind of the wild, wild west now with all these changes that have taken place, but everything that's happened has benefited students. So this gives you an idea. If you have any questions on this, excuse me, ask away. All right. It's important to note that most colleges in the state of California are Cal Grant eligible, but not all. If you want to check, you can go to our website, go to the very bottom of the homepage, and there's a little link that says eligible schools, and it will provide you with this list. So you can check to see the colleges, and this is based on a couple things. One is the number of people who default on their student loans, that cohort, and the graduation rate. So there's a calculation that takes place, and if schools don't meet that criteria, then the college is unable to give out Cal Grants. There's not many colleges. Most of the colleges that are not eligible are private for-profits who may have been eligible last year, but then we recalculated and they're not eligible this year. So a lot of them, kind of fall on and off Cal Grant eligibility. If a student comes up to you and says, man, I am really interested in Johnny's School of Lawnmower Repair, you could say, okay, that sounds great. Hey, let's just double check to make sure that's a Cal Grant eligible school. So you can go on the list and you can see that there's also a list for the schools that are not Cal Grant eligible. And it's a much shorter list, but you can check that information on our website. It's kind of interesting. So we talk about Cal Grants. We have a lot of Cal Grant programs. I'm not going to read all this information to you. However, I got a couple slides that kind of just go over the Cal Grants. Now you notice that at the end of each one of these, there's a designation. So the first one is E1, and that's kind of what we internally call the programs. And we process the different types of awards and the different types of Cal Grants and middle class scholarship. We have a calendar where we start processing one, then we process another, then we process the next one. And that means that sometimes, the high school students, in this case, we always process E1 first. So students who are graduating from high school or who graduated the previous year, these are the first people that we process. And they will be the first ones who see that they're awarded and the first ones that populate onto the college rosters. That's what E1 is. E1 is those high school students who are graduating and applying, or students who graduated the previous year, and you guys, provided another GPA for, then they're going to be given consideration. And oh, by the way, this is really the easiest time to get a Cal Grant. So entitlement, whenever you see entitlement, what that means is if you meet the criteria, you get the award. The state doesn't say, oh, we have X number of awards we can give out, or, oh, we're only going to spend so much money, even though the state's broke. There are as many E1 awards, as many entitlement students who become eligible. They're gonna pay them to have college access funding like the Cal Grant. So that's E1. For students who started at a community college but don't have a Cal Grant or didn't apply, when they jump to a 4-year, they could be eligible with E2. This great third one is the Cal Grant Community College Entitlement Award, relatively new. It has helped tens of thousands of students who typically were not going to be eligible for Cal Grant, because a lot of times students go back to school and it's been a while, and so they don't have a GPA, or they kind of had aged out of the program. So now with this, they can apply to the community college and become, in essence, the same as a high school student, right? We're kind of given the same consideration for aid. And like I said, literally tens of thousands of students, brand new Cal Grant recipients, are now going to community college and getting Cal Grant that never would have had Cal Grant previously. All right, let's look at the next page. Now we also have competitive awards. Competitive basically means exactly that. Everyone goes into a pool, there's a scoring matrix, and we award 13,000 people. And you go, 13,000, that sounds great. It's not great when you consider 200,000 plus are potentially eligible. So it's a very tiny percentage of those students who actually get awarded. Obviously great for the students who get awarded, not so great for the students who don't. The good news is with the other programs, we're seeing fewer and fewer of students, be in the pool to begin with. So that's good news. Cal Grant C is a Cal Grant that's more specifically for occupational or technical type programs. So students who maybe are going to a community college and they're not studying to get a degree, they don't want to get an associate's degree, for example, but they do want to do a 1-year program so they can go out and work in a particular field. And there's lots of certificate programs that are 8 months, 12 months, 14 months, some of them are up to 2 years. That Cal Grant C can be used to get money to help pay for books and supplies, and also at private, nonprofit and for-profit institutions who provide this kind of training, they can also get it. One thing about Cal Grant C that's a little bit different is there's no GPA requirement. So students can apply, We don't run out of these Cal Grant Cs. So any student who says, I would really love to do fill in the blank, check out the fantastic 116 community colleges we have in the state and look at the different kinds of programs that they have. It's kind of amazing, the variety that they have. So all across the state. Cal Grant B, top 2%. You've never heard of it. Not a big deal. It's a big deal to the students who get it. Basically, it means that if a student gets a Cal Grant B and they're going to a 4-year, they get more than the Access Award. They get tuition and fees paid for the very first year, where normally they don't. Normally they have to rely on institutional aid the first year, and then Cal Grant B kicks in the the second, third, and fourth year to pay for the tuition. So just so you know what it is, don't make a note. You don't have to worry about it. No one's going to ask you. It's not on the pop quiz at the end of this presentation. We're all good. So we also have middle class scholarship, which is a little bit of a misnomer. To be honest with you, this is more like kind of a different kind of Cal Grant. This is a award that will give money to students who typically exceed the income level for the regular Cal Grant A. So if the family makes, more money over that income level, they'll automatically be considered for the middle class scholarship, um, if they're attending a UC or CSU. This can only be used at a UC or a CSU, or if we have a student who's going to a community college to one of the bachelor programs I described previously, they could potentially use it there as well. So they don't have to do anything special. You apply by the deadline, you list the UC or the CSU, and you'll automatically be given consideration for middle class, if your income is on the higher level and it exceeds those limits. Now, one thing that's happening that's kind of interesting, especially this year, so we're seeing a lot of students who are kind of right on the cusp in terms of income. So they're actually getting both a middle class scholarship and a Cal Grant. Sometimes it's the Cal Grant that's the full amount or nearly the full amount, and then they get a little tiny middle class scholarship to go along with it. Sometimes it's the other way. I saw a student who had like $8,000 middle class scholarship, and they had a very teeny tiny Cal Grant award. So you're going to see these variations. Doesn't mean anything. Tell your students all they have to do is apply by the deadline, list a UC or a CSU if that's where they're intending to go, and they'll be given automatic consideration. We have some different programs for foster youth. What's important for us is to make sure that when students are filling out the application and they've been a foster youth previously or a ward of the court, that they're indicating that on the application, right? Sometimes students don't know they qualify for these things and they skip those questions. Our job is to make sure when they're filling out an application, they indicate that they were foster youth, or also the same thing related to homelessness. They indicate that. Same thing related to anything. They accurately put down the information as it pertains to them. So we have a Cal Grant B for foster youth, and this is for foster youth, former foster youth students who are attending a community college. They're given consideration for a Cal Grant B. They can apply by September 2nd. And the really cool thing is they get up to 8 years of eligibility. So instead of the normal 4 years or 400%, they get up to 8 years of eligibility. We also have a Foster Youth Access Award. Remember I talked about at the community college the first year, you could get 0 or you could get $6,000. This is another award that pays at the different colleges. So you could be going to a community college with a Cal Grant A, and you could get an access award of up to $6,000 if you have A or B, $4,000 if you have C. If you have any questions about these, you can contact CSAC. We have a lot of information on our website about it. And there's also other organizations like JBay, et cetera, that offer information about these programs. Chafee grant will pay $5,000 a year annually for students who are in foster care, specifically between the ages of 16 and 18, and they have to be under 26 when that academic year starts. So the money can be used for anything. They can apply to anything that helps them go to school. The one really cool thing about the Chafee grant now is the other aid that they're getting is not counted against the aid that they're currently receiving. Previously, if a student was getting, let's say they were getting a Cal grant and a Pell grant, whatever, it could limit the amount of Chafee grant that they got, right? Because the student, has so much financial need and you can only go up to a certain dollar amount. That's no longer the case with the Chafee grant. With the Chafee grant now, what's happening is you can get the $5,000 regardless of the other aid that you're receiving. So this is a real boon to those students who qualify because they're going to get the full dollar amount, and it's exciting that they can apply that to whatever they need to apply it to be able to go to school. Chafee grant. Remember, by the way, that the Chafee grant has a separate application. Students will fill out either the FAFSA or the CADA normally, like they do, and then update that every year. But the first year, so for your graduating high school students, for example, or students who are going to school for the first time, have them complete the Chafee grant application. It's a one-year, one-time thing. They don't have to do it again after the first year, but make sure it's on their radar to do when FAFSA opens up and when CADA opens up. All right, question and answer. I'm going to stump you guys. If a student qualifies for both Cal Grant A and B, what goes into consideration for which one a student will actually receive? That's a good question. We get that all the time. Remember, a student can qualify for both A and B. So the answer is, it depends. It really depends on what school they're going to. So for example, if the student's attending a UC, that's automatically going to default to a Cal Grant A. But if they're going to a CSU or a community college, that's going to default to a Cal Grant B. Now, the one thing that happens sometimes is that at a private school, they might default to Cal Grant B, but Cal Grant A might be the better award. So they have the potential at that institution to actually change it. They would talk to the school and the school would talk to us and we could flip it. Once we do that, it stays to whatever we change it to. So that's the one exception to where we, would want to change it. Is there a specific Cal Grant application? The answer is no. Just the FAFSA or the DREAM Act, that will give you Cal Grant consideration. Sometimes people will say, well, I did my FAFSA. Now, where do I do my Cal Grant application? And there is no Cal Grant application. Just by doing the regular applications and submitting them on time, you're good to go. Let's not forget about all of the various vocational, occupational, or technical programs we have available, especially through the community colleges. So many fantastic programs. So for students who say, I'm not really interested in going to get a degree, but I'm super interested in becoming a dental technician or a welder or a plumber or a Cal State firefighter or, an IT specialist. There's so many programs that students can do with a certificate, or at least start their career with a certificate. So the California Community colleges, they churn out so many people who are workforce ready via these programs. So take a look. Like I said, 116 all over the state. There's a program for everyone. Don't forget alternative sources of financial aid. If a student knows they have to work, why not work for a company that will provide either tuition assistance or tuition reimbursement? Lots of companies, provide this. So Apple, Chipotle, McDonald's, Starbucks, many, many, many more. All, they all have kind of different rules and regulations about how they do it. You might have to work there 90 days before you can get it. But hey, I mean, if you're going to work at a part-time job, I would say work at a part-time job where you have the ability to get some additional money to help pay for college. Also, don't forget about the other awards that are out there in the community. So we work with FastWeb. It's a really great organization. You can go on, plug in your information, and you're going to see all the different kinds of merit scholarships, private scholarships that you wouldn't see just by filling out an application. Don't forget about local banks and credit unions, religious or church groups, service organizations. There's a lot of places that offer scholarships, and people are not tuned into those. So I know that my kids they have on Instagram, they have an account, and on TikTok where they get information about all these different scholarships that become available. Now you have to be a little bit careful. So if you have to pay for something or provide a credit card for something, that's a scam. Don't do it. But there's lots of free information out there for these types of awards. So tell your students, get engaged, plug in, check out FastWeb or one of the similar websites, and you can see what else is available out there. All right. Phew. We're going to take a quick 5-minute break. So at 11:15, we're going to come back and we're going to finish the second section. I want to thank you guys all for your time. Continue to ask questions if you have questions. We will do our best to answer them. I can see that you guys are slamming the questions. That's great. We like them. So we'll come back in 5 minutes and we'll continue. Thank you for hanging with me for the first half of this, and we'll come back with Tracy. Thank you.
Okay, everyone, welcome back from break. My name is Tracy Hale. I am also a member of the training team with the California Student Aid Commission, and I will be presenting the last portion of this workshop today. So if you've made it this far, we appreciate you being here and asking such great questions. We've answered over 250 questions so far since we started this morning. So keep them coming. You know, we're happy to help. And I think that this setting makes it ideal for us to get your questions answered because you can ask throughout the presentation and you don't have to wait till the very end. So don't be shy. You can keep asking away. So this training should conclude shortly before 12 noon, and we just have a few more topics to cover. Thank you, John, for covering the first half and doing such a great job. I'm going to go ahead and continue into our last section, which is high schools working with the California Student Aid Commission. So this is specifically catered to high school counselors and how you can partner closely with CSAC, specifically with GPA uploading, matching, and editing. We had a question in the Q&A box just a moment ago about which GPAs to submit to the commission and how they are factored into Cal Grant consideration. So this is the perfect section for you. We're going to cover all of that information. So first, I want to start with kind of a timeline. This is a checklist for high schools to fulfill throughout the academic year to ensure that your students are applying on time and that their GPAs are getting uploaded and matched for Cal Grant consideration. So starting this month in September, you can use the demographic verification form. I have a link to this form on the next slide. This form is great for you to use to gather demographic information from your high school seniors prior to your GPA upload. And that just ensures that you have the most recent and accurate information on file for your student, including their address, their name, and their date of birth. Everything is going to be a match. By October 1st, schools should make sure that they upload their GPAs not only for their high school seniors, but their last year's graduates. So coming up this October 1st, you'll want to upload GPAs for your class of 2025, as well as your class of 2024. We do take GPAs, of course, after October 1st. The final deadline is March 2nd, and in this case, it'll be March 3rd. I know that there was some confusion about March 2nd versus March 3rd, but I just want to reiterate that March 2nd, 2025 falls on a Sunday, and whenever the March 2nd date falls on a weekend, we push it toward the following Monday. So March 3rd, 2025 is the deadline for this year for GPAs, and then likely for FAFSA and CADA submissions, but that remains to be seen if it's going to be extended this year. By January 1st, you should be notifying your current juniors of the GPA opt-out option. So if they do not want their GPA uploaded to the commission, they can opt out of it. And the state mandates that you've notified students during their junior year by January 1st. And then going into the spring, some of the things that you should be doing weekly include matching and editing your unmatched GPAs. We'll talk about what an unmatched GPA is. And then also assisting your seniors to create their web grants for students account. I have a screenshot for that as well, and later we'll talk about the importance of that account. And then finally, by August 31st of 2025, you should be verifying high school graduation for any remaining class of 2025 graduates who haven't yet self-verified on their own. Seniors can verify their own high school graduation on their Web Grants portal, but to ensure that they have no delays with their Cal Grant disbursements, you can help them by doing it on your end as well. Now, if you don't already have access to web grants for institutions, I highly recommend that you get an account. It's going to help you connect with CSAC and to better help your students. Even if you're not the staff person that uploads GPAs or matches GPAs, it is important to have access to web grants for institutions so that you can pull reports, check status, and have the ability to get into the system to see what's going on with your students. So to get access, you do need to notify your campus's web grants system administrator. There should be somebody who is already designated as your system admin that is decided by the school or the district. So if you're not sure who your system administrator is, you might want to ask around. Typically, it's somebody like the head counselor or maybe the college and career technician, but it's going to vary from school to school. But every school or district should have a designated administrator who can get you access and create a new account for you. So we'll talk about the different types of ways to access web grants and the different reports to pull. But first, before we do that, I did want to share with you that we have some job aids, different forms, and reference guides to assist you in the GPA upload, editing, and matching process. I mentioned that demographic information form that you can use and start giving to your seniors this month. We have a blank template that you can throw your school's logo on and use that as you wish. We also have a comprehensive GPA upload guide. We have the GPA opt-out form available for you to access. The Web Grants Access Request user form is also available at this site. So if you click on the link at the very bottom of the page, that will take you to our resource page with all of the GPA tools. So I definitely recommend bookmarking this link here and having it readily available. Now, submitting GPAs to CSAC. So high schools can submit GPAs for their seniors and their last year graduates, either individually in a manual way or by uploading them in a batch. So the batches must be saved as either a text file or a CSV file. You're going to have two files, one for your class of 2025 and another for your class of 2024. You can utilize the 25-26 non-SSN GPA Excel template and the non-SSN GPA record layout to assist you in converting your data into an upload-ready file. And then also see the guide for assistance with that. I also want to note that the GPA layout, the file layout did change this year. So there were some of you who were on top of it. As soon as the school year started, you pulled your report from your system and tried to upload it directly to CSAC, but may have got error messages. And that's likely because your system that's pulling the report has not yet been updated based on the new file layout. So if you're having issues and you're trying to submit but getting error messages, you would want to check with your school's IT department or contact, or if you have a student information system that you use like Aries or Skyward or PowerSchool, you may need to check with them to ensure that they have updated that layout so that when you pull your GPA report, it's in the correct format. So just keep that in mind. Now, we've mentioned a few times that you will be uploading for two different classes, your prior year grads as well as your current year grads. And there's a reason for that. High school students have 2 years to qualify for that high school entitlement Cal Grant Award. I saw a lot of you asking questions in the Q&A about, what makes a student an entitlement awardee versus a competitive awardee. Well, let me tell you that an entitlement award is guaranteed. If a student meets the criteria for a high school entitlement award, they will be guaranteed that award. Competitive awards, on the other hand, those are limited in number. We have only about 13,000 per year for the entire state. And so we want as many students as possible to qualify for an entitlement award. And for your prior high school grads, class of 2024 in this case, they still have this year for 25-26 to qualify. And it's a good reason, for students, especially who maybe missed the Cal Grant priority deadline during their senior year. Perhaps they took a gap year after graduation, or they chose not to apply for aid but now want to return back to school, or especially for students who maybe had a low GPA that was uploaded during their senior year. On the next few slides, we'll talk about how to calculate high school GPAs, and you'll find out that your prior year grads will have a totally different GPA potentially that they'll be uploaded their year after graduating, because you'll now be incorporating their senior year grades. So keep that in mind. And then also, as I mentioned too, make sure that you're uploading 2 different batches, one for your prior year grads and one for your current year seniors. So we've been talking about the importance of submitting and uploading GPAs. However, there are certain circumstances where having a GPA is not feasible for some students. In that case, we can accept test scores in lieu of a GPA only under the following situations. If the student's high school is not accredited, if their pass-fail coursework could not be converted to a 4.0 scale, if the student was homeschooled or attended high school outside the United States, or if the student's GPA is older than 5 years at the time they applied. And so in this case, we can accept test scores from the SAT, ACT, the GED, HiSET, and the TASC. But again, we must accept a GPA if there is a valid GPA available. It's only in these cases when we can accept a test score in lieu of that. In these situations, the student would fill out a GPA verification form. They would indicate that they're submitting a test score, and it is not required to be signed by a school. So these are done separately on a one-by-one basis using a form that the student must fill out. Now, this is a look at the GPA calendar. This might be helpful for you to take a screenshot of, just so you're aware. And, CSAC at any time is usually working within 3 academic years. For example, we're currently closing out the 23-24 award year. We're having schools reconcile all of their funds. We're currently awarding for 24-25 as more students apply. And then we're also working in 25-26 as the upload GPA capability is now available. And so it's helpful to know kind of what dates to expect certain things to happen. And that's why we included both the 23-24 academic year as well as the current 24-25 academic year. So using the green chart at the bottom there, I'm going to refer to this, the 24-25 academic year. You're uploading GPAs for your class of 24 and your class of 25 in order for them to be considered for a Cal Grant in 25-26, right? For next year. Uploading was set to open in August, but I believe it just opened. I don't have the exact date in mind, but it was very recent. And the uploading capability closes on March 2nd, 2025. Actually, that should be March 3rd. I apologize. The editing capability will open on October 1st and will be available through April 30th. And then your matching capabilities will be available starting November 1st all the way through September 30th of 2025. So you still could actually get in and match students' GPAs from last year in order for them to be considered for a Cal Grant for this year. So again, this is a helpful calendar just so you kind of have an idea of when things open and close. So I suggest that you save this. Now, what is an unmatched GPA? This happens when the demographic data submitted with the GPA from the high school differs from the data submitted by the student on their FAFSA or CADA. Mismatched data may include their date of birth, their home address, their email address, and so on. Other common issues with unmatched GPAs is the difference in the student's name. This is usually the one we see most often. In fact, I was working with some of our school support staff members, and I asked them, what is the most common issue that you see with unmatched GPAs? And overwhelmingly, they said the name variations. And so here on this slide, you can see that someone who goes by Mike Garcia or Miguel Garcia may have several iterations of their name. And you'll want to make sure that whatever name they've included as their legal name on the FAFSA or CADA matches the name that was included with their GPA. So Miguel Garcia may also be considered Miguel Hernandez Garcia or Miguel Hernandez Jr. So that's why it's important to use that demographic verification form, or at least, confirm with your students what legal name they're using on their application. So again, that is the most common reason for unmatched GPAs is the name. So why match GPAs? What's the difference? If I upload the GPA, it's there, CSAC has it, we're done, right? Well, not necessarily, because in order for a student to be considered for Cal Grant, their GPA must be matched to their financial aid application. This ensures that this student will be processed for Cal Grant A and B eligibility consideration. Matching GPAs also supports the all-in for FAFSA CADA AB 469 mandate and helps count toward the Race to Submit campaign. The Race to Submit dashboard is below if you want to click the link at the bottom of the screen. I will mention that Cal Grant C does not require a GPA, but again, if you want your student to be considered for Cal Grant A or B, they'll need a matched GPA. So ways that you can help is again confirming their demographic info prior to uploading, ensure that all your GPAs are uploaded by March 2nd, and make sure that you're manually linking any unmatched GPAs to their financial aid applications between November 1st and September 30th of next year. So there are 2 steps to matching GPAs. The first is identifying who has an unmatched GPA, and you can easily do that by running a report in WebGrants, the non-SSN GPA status report. And your second step is to manually match the GPA by using the Match Non-SSN to Fin app screen. These reports and screens are all available in WebGrants for institutions. So again, make sure that you get access if you haven't already. So let's take a look at the steps one by one. So first is running your non-SSN GPA status report. This is an example here using a fictitious high school and all fictitious students. So down here, we see that we have several different columns: first name, last name, date of birth, the GPA that was uploaded, graduation date, and then over here, we can see if the GPA has been matched to an application or not. If it says yes under match, it means you're good to go. You don't need to do anything further. The student has not only applied, but their GPA has successfully been automatically matched or perhaps manually matched at a later date. But if you see no listed under match, you're going to have some indicators here in matched fields. So let me show you here. This student, Shannon Aguilera Gonzalez, has not yet been matched, but we can confirm that what has been matched is her first name, her date of birth, and her city. So that tells us that it's likely that her last name and her physical address are not matching. So kind of process of elimination there. Your second step is to manually match the GPA using the Match Non-SSN to Fin app screen. Some expert tips is to leave the last name blank when you're searching to expand your query results, especially in this case with Shannon, as we know her last name did not match. We also recommend using just the first 3 letters of the student's first name as submitted on the GPA record, again, to ensure that you have query results. enter their date of birth as you submitted on their GPA record, and then enter your 6-digit school board ID, and always remember to add 2 trailing zeros at the end. So if your school code is 012345, you'll want to make sure you enter that number with 2 zeros at the end. Here you can see that when the query results populate, you can locate your student from the list and click to open the record. So if you were to click here, you would open Shannon's record. Once you've selected a record, it will turn blue. And any records that are already highlighted in green have already been matched. So if you were to try to click on this student, Shane Abel, you would not be able to click on it because he has already been matched. So there's no reason to go any further on this page. Once you've opened the student record, you're going to see the GPA record as you uploaded it here in green. And then listed over here on the right in white are going to be any student applications that match your search criteria. So for example, we searched SHA for Shannon with a date of birth of 10/26/06. We have Shannon, Charlena, and Shane all with the same date of birth. But just looking at the GPA record, I can tell that this is my student here. It looks like everything has been matched except for her last name. That's the most common issue we see. So in this case, I can match my GPA to her app by clicking the bubble here and clicking Submit Change. Just be aware that some things you might see here are twins and triplets. So, if you have, say, a twin with the same last name, same date of birth, same address, you want to be careful not to match the GPA to the wrong application. I am a twin. Again, my name's Tracy. My twin's name is Tina. We have the same middle initial and we have the same last name along with the same address and same date of birth. So that's when we saw issues come up, was when, we were getting matched to the wrong record, whether it was with, GPAs or in other places. So it's important to know that you are matching to the right student. Once you've successfully matched your GPA to the correct application, you'll see this screen here in green that your GPA has been matched, there's no errors, and then you'll see Shannon's name there in green. So you know that you have been successful. Now, in addition to matching, there also is the editing capability. This allows you to overwrite the demographic information that you had previously uploaded to CSAC. Editing can assist in the matching process. So we'll take a look at when to edit GPAs. So you can simply match a GPA if you know for sure that that GPA record should go with that particular financial aid application. However, if you do a query and you're not only not coming up with any results and you get an error message, and in addition to that, your student says that they submitted their FAFSA or CADA over 10 days ago, that would be a time when you would want to actually try to edit the GPA. Now, if the edit functionality has since closed, you can continue matching GPAs through September 30th. So just keep that in mind. But really, editing GPAs is going to come in handy when you have these situations where a student says, I already submitted my FAFSA or I already submitted my CADA. It's been over 10 days and you're not seeing those query results. So try that when in doubt. Next, we'll take a look at the GPA reports that you can pull from web grants. The Financial Aid Application Status Report is a really helpful outreach tool to help identify students who have not yet submitted their FAFSA or CADA. So this will be especially helpful in your all-in AB 469 efforts. Another helpful tip for this report is downloading it as an CSV so you can open it as an Excel spreadsheet. Doing so allows you to use the sort and filter function to easily sort your students by the recommended actions. So I want to show you here that in the final column on the far right, we will actually tell you what action is needed for each student. You may see no action, or if it says none, that means they've already applied and their GPA has already been matched. You may see other actions like outreach to the student to submit their application, or have the student verify their dependency status with their college. And so again, downloading it into Excel will allow you to sort and filter so you can get rid of the students with no action needed and simply focus on the students who you need to reach out to. Now, keep in mind that this application status report does not become available until CSAC starts receiving FAFSAs and CADAs. So it's likely that this won't be available until December at the earliest. The non-SSN GPA status report, this is the one that we had used in our efforts to match GPAs. Again, you can see the match column here will tell you if their GPA has been matched or not. And even it'll tell you if they haven't yet applied. So another great useful tool for outreach. You can also utilize this one report for both of your high school grad years. So it'll list both students who are graduating this year in 2025, as well as your previous year grads, class of 2024. So just one report for all your needs. The student summary report is another great tool to confirm that your school's GPAs have been submitted. So if you've never uploaded in batches before, you can utilize this report to ensure that it was done correctly. You can also use it to refer to what batch ID it was uploaded in. If it was done in a batch, you would see BID for batch ID and which one. Or if it was added manually, you would see the word added here under method. So again, this is a good way to just confirm that everything's going well on your end and that we have received your GPAs. Another also helpful tip for this report is to use it to remind students to create their Web Grants for Students account, because on the far right column here, you can actually see if they've been awarded a Cal Grant or not. So this would be great if you have a student who has applied, whose GPA has been matched, but they haven't yet been awarded. There may be something that they need to do on their end through their Web Grants for Students. The student summary report also has, I talked about the column here that for the method. Application status will tell you if they filed on time or if they filed late. If they have no SAI, it means they started the application, but it's likely rejected or incomplete, so they would not have an SAI. And then again, the awarded column for having a Cal Grant or having no Cal Grant. All right, and then we want to talk briefly about the gold hold. These are flagged GPAs, and it occurs when information from the GPA record does not fully match the financial aid application. And we really just need you to verify if the match is accurate or not. And so in this case, if you were to go into your match non-SSN GPA to Fin app screen, any GPAs listed in gold are going to be those that are flagged. You can resolve these gold hold GPAs by going to the Review Flagged Match GPAs screen in Web Grants, and you can review the record and select either verify if it's correct or unmatch if it's not. Again, gold hold students are typically those that have very similar data to somebody else that you uploaded, like twins and triplets. So that's typically who you're going to see in gold. So it's really just us wanting you to make sure that the match is indeed accurate. And I mentioned high school graduation verification earlier in my section, that it should be done by graduating seniors by August 31st of the academic year. Now, students are prompted to verify their own high school graduation in their Web Grants for Students account. This is required for the student to receive a disbursement from their college in the following year. However, if a student has not yet opened their Web Grants for Students account, or if they just haven't done it yet, you as the counselor can actually go in and you can mass verify very easily and quickly to ensure that your students are going to receive a disbursement during their freshman year of college. And so there are three options. You can select graduated if the student has met high school graduation requirements. Only students with a Cal Grant will populate on this list. So I do want to mention that you're not going to see all of your seniors. You're only going to see your seniors who have been awarded a Cal Grant for the following year. You want to select not graduated if the student is not expected to meet graduation requirements by December 31st of the award year. And then pending should be used if you yourself cannot determine if they've graduated high school. And this would be in the case of maybe a student had transferred to another school or another district during their senior year and you just don't know. And if you leave it pending, it's perfectly fine. It just means it's going to put the onus back on the student or even the college to verify that they graduated high school. So rather than selecting not graduated, you would select pending if you just don't know if they graduated. And then just so you're aware that taking a gap year and Cal Grant eligibility, it's perfectly fine for a student to take a break, right? If they want to take that gap year between their high school senior year and their first year of college, all they need to do is place it on a leave of absence. Leave of absence can be done for up to 2 years. So that's 4 semesters or 6 quarters. And they can do it right in their Web Grants for Students account. I was working on the phones this week and last week, and just yesterday I had a student who was starting her first year of college this month, and she was asking, why wasn't I considered for a Cal Grant? And it turns out that she had been awarded at UC San Diego last year because she had listed UC San Diego, but decided not to go that year. She decided to take a gap year. And the reason her Cal Grant didn't roll over to the following year is because she hadn't yet put it on a leave of absence. So I gave her instructions on how to do that. And then her Cal Grant was successfully rolled over to this year, just in time for her first year of college. Now, bonus points to you if you're able to identify the location in this photo. If you know one of our trainers, John Waldrop, if you know him, you might know that he lived here for a time. So you can always put your guesses in the chat if you know where this is. All right. Now, Web Grants for Students. This is the student portal where they can log in and they can check that their GPA was submitted. They can update their contact information. This is also the place where they'll verify that they graduated high school or place their Cal Grant on a leave of absence. They can also use it to check their Cal Grant award amount. And again, that's going to vary based on whether they're attending a UC, a CSU, a community college, or a private school. They can verify their school of attendance. This is another common issue. I was a Cal Grant coordinator for 10 years, and one of the most common reasons why students didn't get paid their Cal Grant on time was because they had not yet verified their school of attendance. We're going to automatically list them under the school that was listed first on their FAFSA or CADA, just simply because that is how our automated system works. The student actually needs to go in and verify. If they're not actually attending CSU Los Angeles, but instead are attending UCLA, they need to confirm that in their Web Grants for Students. They can also utilize their portal to confirm how many years they have left of Cal Grant eligibility. So very important that all schools sign up for all students, not all schools. Students should create a Web Grants for Students account in order to keep track of their Cal Grant, as well as their middle class scholarship and even their Chafee grant. So it's a very important tool. Now, I did want to talk about our growing CSAC Student Ambassador Program. This program you may be familiar with. Essentially, it's a peer counseling program where students will actually go in to their classrooms and talk about financial aid. Last year, we had 14 schools participate and 62 student ambassadors who completed a presentation. So if you want to bring this program to your campus, you can scan the QR code or go to the link at the bottom of the slide to complete the Microsoft form. We'll send you the program facilitator guide, and you can recruit students to have them apply. It's not only a great way to get students aware of financial aid and how to apply, but it's also a great leadership and empowerment activity for students to participate in as an ambassador. So we highly recommend that you get the program going at your school because we've had great success so far. And then just leaving you with a few helpful tips. Remember to have students complete their applications as soon as possible, but no later than the priority deadline. If they do miss that Cal Grant priority deadline, they can still apply because other aid is available. I saw a question in the chat about a student who was having difficulty with their CADA application for 24-25. And the counselor asked, is it too late? It's not too late. Students can still apply for 24-25, even though they won't be considered for a Cal Grant or middle class scholarship. There are still other aid opportunities like federal aid, like the Pell Grant or the Federal Work Study Program, student loans, and so on. Students should also always list at least one California college on their FAFSA. CADA will only allow California colleges, so this is really specific to the FAFSA. But even if they plan on studying out of state, by listing at least one California school will ensure that they are considered for Cal Grant and middle class scholarship because plans change, right? They may be considering going out of state, but they end up staying back to attend community college, or they find a fit for them within the state. Advise students to create their Web Grants for Students account after they complete their FAFSA or their CADA. Remind them to check their email, including their junk and spam folders. And then if students have special circumstances, they should be contacting their college's financial aid office as soon as possible. We saw a lot of scenarios from you in the Q&A box, say students whose parents live out of the country and they have no contact with them, students who are couch surfing, maybe a student who is unable to obtain parent information for safety purposes. They need to contact their college financial aid office because there are different procedures for them to get approved for financial aid. And, we don't want a student to miss out on financial aid opportunities if they're not able to complete the FAFSA or CADA in the traditional manner. So definitely have them reach out to their financial aid office. And just leaving you with some resources. We have lots of different resources available on our website through the commission. And so the first is the CSAC Cash for College workshop series. These workshops are designed to assist students and families with completing the FAFSA, the CADA, and the Chafee Grant application for foster youth. Each year, hundreds of these workshops are conducted by colleges, by high schools, by community organizations throughout the state. Additionally, we also offer Train the Trainer workshops. If you are interested in hosting a Cash for College night, you can attend our Train the Trainer workshop to get all the information you need in order to host. So please visit our website here, cashforcollege.csac.ca.gov, not only to check the current schedule, but also to get in contact with our team if you're interested in hosting. Now, the California Student Opportunity and Access Program, CalSOAP for short, this is a financial aid outreach program that's administered by CSAC. They will do outreach throughout the state. They serve geographic regions usually with documented low eligibility or low college participation rates. So they are available if you need assistance at a workshop or a college or career fair. There are 16 consortia throughout California which serve students in over 300 schools. And so definitely reach out to the CalSoap program if you're interested in having them at your event. You can click the link at the bottom of the screen to get to their contact page. So just a quick plug for the California Community College System. If you weren't aware, there are 116 community college campuses across the state. It is by far the largest public community college system in the country, and they offer a wide range of financial aid options for students to help pay for their tuition, their books, and even their living expenses. I attended a community college and I transferred to UC Davis after 2 years at Solano College. Not only did it save me thousands in tuition, but I feel like it also better prepared me for the rigor of a four-year university. So for more information about the California Community College System, visit icangotocollege.com, and you can see all sorts of information about the programs they offer, tuition charges, and all of the locations. We also want to let you know that the nominations for the Arthur S. Marmaduke Award are now available. This award recognizes an outstanding California high school counselor who demonstrates exemplary skills in helping students fulfill their dreams of going to college. So if you know of somebody who is just an outstanding high school counselor who leads the charge in FAFSA and CADA completion or Cash for College nights or matching GPAs, please nominate them for this award. The winners will receive uh, a ceremony in their honor, as well as a really beautiful award to display. So the deadline for this nomination season is October 31st, 2024. And just a quick shout out to Travis Credit Union. They are a proud partner of the California Student Aid Commission. We fully value and appreciate their commitment to the communities we serve. They offer lots of different services for financial literacy, including a young adult financial boot camp, financial education webinars, even scholarships. So please help us support our proud partner by spreading the word and letting your students know about these really great resources. And this will be included in your work book, the virtual workbook, the copy of the slides, just all of the community impact that Travis Credit Union has had in their area. And then we have several social media accounts as well as toolkits if you are interested in utilizing your own social media to get the word out to students about financial aid. And so you can find our toolkits down at the bottom using that link at the bottom of the page, as well as visiting our social media accounts on X, on Instagram, and TikTok. We actually do TikTok and Instagram live sessions about 2 to 3 times a month, where students and families can come on and we will answer their questions in real time. We also post very regularly. You've probably seen Sarah Beth, Como, or Jared doing lots of videos on all the different FAFSA issues that came up, as well as Cal Grant and Middle Class Scholarship information videos. So check them out. And then please take our survey. We want to know if you got what you needed out of this workshop, if there was a topic that you wish we would have covered more, or a topic that wasn't included that you'd be interested in for next year. Please let us know in the survey. We use your feedback and we actually implement it as best we can into our workshop series the following years. So please let us know what you thought. We'll be emailing the participant survey following the workshop. And then if you don't see it, if you didn't receive it, please contact us at training@csac.ca.gov, which don't worry, that email is on the next slide. So if you have any questions after this workshop, please feel free to reach out to school support. School support, the contact info here in the middle, this is specifically for financial aid officers and high school counselors. So if you have a question or if you need assistance with anything regarding GPAs or looking up a student's eligibility, contact school support. If your students need our help, you can refer them to our student support line. And then if you need anything from today, like a copy of the slides, or if you need the copy of the survey, you can email us here at training@csac.ca.gov. And with that, we would love to say thank you so much, not only for attending our workshop this morning and not only for asking such great questions, but most of all for all the hard work that you do with your students every year. We know the struggles and the difficulties of assisting students with the financial aid process. We see you at Cash for College nights. We see you in the in-person workshops, and we just want to say how much we appreciate all the hard work you do. And so with that, it concludes our workshop, and we wish you a great rest of your afternoon. Thank you, everybody.